50% since a year ago today. So the farmers, the egg farmers, have made the changes as we're looking at a vaccine, and we're making tremendous progress.
Secretary Rollins, I appreciate you, and I appreciate having a president that is taking our challenges seriously.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Now recognize Dr. Adams from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here today. I do have some serious concerns and questions I want to raise with you. First of all, the real truth is that farm country is in crisis, and the people that I represent deserve and need answers. American farmers wake up before dawn. They don't ask for handouts. They ask for fair markets, reliable policy, and a government that doesn't make life harder for them. Government has made life harder for our farmers. And so this administration has failed them on all three counts. But let me just be clear about something. What's happened on your watch and under the laws of this administration, we're seeing an increase in everyday costs, cuts to nutrition programs, pushing many, including children and veterans, off nutrition assistance. We're seeing a useless tariff battle and the abandonment of small farmers. So let me begin with this administration's war on nutrition. We're already seeing millions lose access to nutrition benefits from the implementation of H.R. 1, not a beautiful thing. 17,000 individuals in Mecklenburg County, which I represent, have already lost their food assistance benefits. And we're talking about people being pushed off of these benefits, who are not able-bodied adults, they avoiding work. They're workers. They're elderly individuals. They can't navigate a new bureaucratic work verification system. They're veterans who fell through the cracks of a needless administrative agenda. They're children whose families are caught up in the turbulence of economic downturns, and this administration helped cause that. SNAP participation nationwide fell by 4 million people between July 2025 enactment and February 2026. And that's not efficiency, that is hunger. SNAP is not just a nutrition program, it's an economic and agricultural market driver. So, Madam Secretary, this administration, you cut SNAP, terminated local food programs, gutted FSA, other regional office staffing, and then you called that reform. But reform implies measuring outcomes, and it implies accountability, it implies that somebody somewhere in that building is tracking what happens next. So please tell me, does USDA have a long-term data and tracking system in place to measure the widening of the poverty gap increase that increased hunger throughout the country and the collapse of grocery access in rural communities and other areas with limited access? And that's a yes or no question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, listen, it's still causing a lot of harm, but Secretary Rollins, you serve at the pleasure of this administration, and you've used farm country as a bargaining chip, not a priority. This department and the administration really needs to be accountable for soaring production costs, reduced global export demand. Markets our farmers spent decades building have been handed to countries like Brazil and Argentina and Australia, while this administration picked trade fights that it had no plan to win. So can I get a specific number? Do you know how many billions of dollars in agricultural exports to China has the United States lost as a direct result of retaliatory tariffs imposed by our trading partners since this administration took office? Do you have a specific number?
Actually, we've increased exports in the billions, about $22 billion in the last year since taking over. So I think your information's wrong.
Well, over almost 15 billion, Madam Secretary, 15 billion. That's from China alone, not to mention other trading partners. So let me move on. As the USDA Secretary, have you conducted a comprehensive economic impact assessment of the retaliatory tariffs on American agricultural producers? Have you done that?
Yes, ma'am. And corn exports are up 20%, dairy's up 11%, tree nuts up 21%, ethanol's up 20%, and fresh fruits and veggies are up 4% just in the last year.
Okay, well-
We've struck 19 new trade deals.
Okay, let me
So
claim
we're
my
getting it
time.
back.
I have another question or part of that. So can this committee get an analysis within the next 30 days?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. So let me ask you, I've talked to you, I think, before about the 1890s. I'm an 1890 graduate.
Yes, ma'am.
And I worked with Mr. Scott a lot on the issues. And the Department of Agriculture, in my opinion, has a legal and moral obligation to support the 1890 historically black colleges and universities. But
I
right
agree.
now, we're failing that obligation. You've proposed separating the 1890 research program from the extension programs. That's creating a major problem. I really wish you would take another look at that.
Well, I sure will. I had all the
Generally, time has
1890
expired.
presidents in about a month ago, and we had an incredible conversation and are partnering together. So I would love to get more information on
All
that.
right, so I'll follow up with you. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am, and we'll get
Thank
the
you.
30-day trade
very much.
to you as well, within 30 days. Thank you, Dr.
Mr. Chairman, I
Adams.
yield back.
Now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Rouser, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you and the ranking member for honoring and recognizing David Scott and his service, as well as Doug LaMalfa in his service. Both were incredible members of this committee and great Americans and patriots, too. So, Madam Secretary, great to see you.
You too.
And
Thank you.
first, I want to thank you for visiting my home state of North Carolina and our producers down there. I know they really enjoyed seeing you a few days ago. And I'll just say that I appreciate your attention to the export markets for all of our commodities, and some of which you and I have talked about personally from time to time when we run across each other. And so greatly appreciate that. We've got a lot of folks that are feeling a lot of pressures, and those export markets are obviously really key. Which brings me to a broader point, because I was listening to the conversation, the debate earlier at the outset of the hearing. And, you know, I think if you look at the broader picture, for 40 years plus, American agriculture, Republican administrations, Democrat administrations, the whole philosophy was production should go where it's cheapest. Mm-hmm. And that's often not been to the advantage of this country. And so I think people who understand the broad picture really appreciate what President Trump is doing. He's trying to level the playing field. And, you know, you don't do this overnight. I mean, you had 40, 50 years of China. I can't tell you how many people, when I worked for U.S. Senator Jesse Helms and then later Elizabeth Dole, line after line after line of people would come in the office and say, if we can just get our market in China,
Yeah.
you know, it's going to make everybody better, and we're going to be able to change their communist regime, and they're going to become more democratic. And my old boss would look at them and more or less say, you can take the tiny dragon and turn it into a big dragon, because they're going to keep their communist philosophy. Mm-hmm. You know, China has a 100-year plan to annihilate this country and every other democratic nation around the world. And of course, I think it's important for us to recognize, too, how much Brazil plays into that. They are basically
That's right.
a centerpiece of Chinese dictatorial communist policy in South America. And if you look at our commodities grown in North Carolina, the one place where we're being outpaced in a big way, and unfairly so, is Brazil. Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of the big reasons for that is this 40, 50-year philosophy that has been in place, that the president, you know, in his first year and a half has done a tremendous, and you as well, the entire administration has done a tremendous job.
Thank you.
To rebalance the playing field. And I love the Great American Cotton Plan. You know, cotton is a big part of our agriculture economy in North Carolina, and textiles obviously is a
That's
mainstay in the state, although endured a lot of hardship over the years because of the policies I was just talking about. So can you talk from the administration standpoint about your plans for Great American Cotton and its role for American textiles and what we're doing to rebalance the trade aspect on that front.
Yeah, that was really well said, and I'll just add a little bit to that. In 2023, America lost our crown as the world's cotton export leader to Brazil. Brazil in the last few years has also taken corn, soybeans, processing, et cetera. These are major national security issues that we are taking very, very seriously. Cotton, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, is at the very top of that list. To see the decimation of the policies that have happened to our cotton farmers and other farmers along the way due to bad trade is really sort of eye-opening. USDA will be investing significant resources, time, et cetera, treasure, et cetera, to ensure that we can rebuild that great American industry. And as alongside that, North Carolina will be the textile industry. We used to have a couple thousand textile mills in this country, and now I think we're down to maybe 100, and a lot of those in North Carolina. So this is the onshoring, putting America first, getting back to putting our citizens, our businesses first, and ensuring we're securing our country for the next 250 years. And while I've been talking about cotton a lot in the last few days, we've talked about a lot of the different commodities over the last year and 4 months, and we're working really hard to get that market back, but also to make sure people understand. I don't know, Congressman, if you were in here, but the Make America Healthy Again movement isn't just about food, although that's the driver. It's about what we wear as well. And so plant, not plastics, America, not Brazil or China.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Now recognize the gentlelady from Connecticut, Mrs. Hayes, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for being here. Recently, the USDA announced plans to reorganize, reallocate, and rename the Food, Nutrition, and Consumer Services Mission Area, which includes the Food and Nutrition Services, or F&S, the agency responsible for administering SNAP and other critical nutrition programs. On May 11th, I sent a letter to the Department of Agriculture, along with 47 of my Democratic colleagues, requesting information regarding this reorganization. I listed a series of questions that we were looking for answers to. I received a response this morning, which I haven't really had time to review thoroughly, from Deputy Secretary Vaden, in which he says, quote, "Notably absent were these questions raised in this public letter, and he would welcome an opportunity to provide information." Perhaps Deputy Secretary Vaden forgot that he had a hard stop and members were not allowed to speak, and that this was a private, off-the-record roundtable on a topic that is so critically important, and the American public needs to hear answers to this. So I'd like to take the opportunity to talk to you about some of these things. The letter that I sent highlighted concerns about F&S losing nearly 30% of its workforce since the start of this administration, and this reorganization leaving critical nutrition programs dangerously short-staffed at precisely the moment where they are needed most. In the response that I received, Deputy Secretary Vaden made egregious statements blaming both the Obama and Biden administration for some of the gaps in the disbursement of food. He blamed union bosses, government shutdowns, and the Chevron relocation, but does not address any of the concerns that I listed. So I feel the department should be able to talk about this in full public view and let people understand the answers to these very critical questions. I am open to hearing your thoughts on this reorganization, and it should not be behind closed doors. So while I can't go through all of the questions, just a few that I had were, how many employees will be impacted by this organization, and how will the USDA fill vacancies resulting from the reorganization while there's a hiring freeze? And then I guess one of my primary concerns is, how do you intend to maintain regional program expertise and relationships with state agencies under this new hub structure?
I'll take the last one first, and then if I forget any, let me know, Congresswoman. First, on the expertise in the new hubs, our goal is that this actually becomes even more effective, because we'll be out in the country with the very people that we're serving versus here in Washington. We're moving several of the hubs to the middle of the country. We have some on the West Coast and some on the East Coast, and no one has been cut, no employees have been cut in that reorganization. No food aid has been compromised. This is really an effort to get closer to the people that we serve and out of the Washington, D.C. area. So I apologize if there was a hard stop and not everyone got their questions answered. We'll reschedule.
Well, can
if
I
we can do
guess
that.
just in the interest of time, because I do only have 5 minutes.
Yes,
He
ma'am.
said he would welcome a second opportunity to provide information. Can you commit here today, at least to a first opportunity to at least answer the questions that were asked in the letter?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My next question, I just want to follow up on Rep. Adams' question, predictably, about SNAP. In the state of Connecticut, more than 50,000 people, Connecticut residents, lost access to benefits. Yesterday, my Connecticut Governor, Ned Lamont, committed $8.5 million in emergency federal aid and from a response, a fund that was created in response to federal cuts. It will be a one-time $300 grocery assistance card for residents. But this is a state government cleaning up a federal mess. Ms. Adams asked you, just as a yes or no question, I'd ask you to just give us some details on what your department is doing to take steps to ensure that families who lose SNAP benefits do not fall deeper into food insecurity over the coming months and years.
Again, the economy, we have more people working than ever before. Our unemployment numbers are the lowest they've ever been. Wages are high in the blue collar, and the highest I think they've been. And so as a result of that, that is the goal. It's a supplemental nutrition assistance program for when the times are the toughest. Now, if there are stories of families who,
I'm sorry, my
because of
question
that,
was, what does your department plan to do to take steps to ensure that families don't fall deeper, families that lost benefits don't fall deeper into hunger?
well, that's exactly what we're doing by ensuring that the families that really need this are the ones that are getting it. SNAP had a 40% increase in the last administration, 40% in terms of the outlay that was going out.
My time is going to
It's
expire, but again, you have not answered the
unsustainable.
question about what the USDA plans to do to ensure that families don't fall deeper
Gentlelady's
into
time has
hunger.
expired.
I yield back.
Now,
Thank you.
recognize gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Kelly, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, like Mr. Rouser, also want to thank the chairman and the ranking member for recognizing former chairman David Scott. What a tremendous, amazing, and Mr. LaMalfa earlier. We lost two of the mentors on this committee who showed us all how it should be run, and we'll miss them, but we take forward the way that they worked on this committee. Secretary Rollins, thank you for being here today. I also want to thank you for your visits to Mississippi. They mean so much. I want to begin by thanking you and President Trump for putting American farmers back at the center of our agricultural policy. Farmers across Mississippi appreciate President Trump's commitment to strengthening the farm economy and ensuring agriculture remains a priority. I also appreciate your leadership at USDA and your work to implement the President's agenda on the behalf of the American producers. I also want to pat the chairman and this committee in getting $10.5 billion in assistance to our farmers a year and a half ago, and the President following up with another $10+ billion. That was so important to do because our farmers are really struggling with input costs, with bad markets and all those things. So I thank y'all for all the improvement. Mr. Rouser stole my thunder on the Great American Cotton Plan, and you articulated that, but that is also so important to states like Mississippi. So I just want to thank you for your hard work in that. Turning to another challenge facing producers in Mississippi, our state has experienced a series of drought conditions over the last several years. Cattle producers in particular have seen tremendous losses in forage and hay production as a result. Congress passed some very positive enhancement to the livestock forage program in the Working Families Tax Cut Act. Can you update the committee on the status of implementation of these changes to the LFP program?
Yes, we are getting very close to being taking that to conclusion. Of course, the new reference price is going to affect this fall. A lot of those working family tax cut programs have really have moved out and have made a tremendous difference to the country. I think that's why you see a lot more people going back to work. But specific to that program, we're really close on that. If you want to follow up with me directly, we'll give you exact timeline.
Absolutely, Secretary. And as USDA works to deliver these improvements, I also want to touch on the role of the Farm Service Agency. The vital role of FSA cannot be overstated. As the most farmer-facing agency with offices in nearly every county across the country, FSA is key to helping producers make operational decisions. With the monumental changes made to the farm safety net last summer, the agency's support is even more important. Has FSA been adequately staffed and equipped to meet the needs of our producers and swiftly implement these provisions?
I can't, again, to your point, overstate the importance of these FSA offices. There's no doubt there is room for efficiency. It is congressionally, it is statute that there has to be an office in every county, so no offices have closed, even though I think the congressman from Massachusetts mentioned there were office closures. But we are really digging in this year. I visited multiple FSA offices, sitting down with the teams that are in there. I've thanked them because some of them are operating at 50, 60% of the staff that they had before we came into office. And so I will recognize there is room for improvement. We are working really hard to get that improved. And what I will say, and this is true for anyone, Republican or Democrat, if you have specific FSA offices that are saying, we're weeks behind, we cannot get this funding out without more help, what we'll do is we've been moving around in Nebraska with the fires. We relocated some FSA offices from non-fire parts of the state of Nebraska to where the fire hit the most for our producers, and while we're restaffing.
Secretary Rollins, I'm a veteran, and I love it when people who haven't served want to talk about what we do and don't for our veterans. I don't like it when veterans who don't deserve benefits get benefits that they don't deserve, because it takes away from those who actually deserve it. I feel the same way about our SNAP program. The fraud and abuse that was rampant in some areas, that took away from the well-deserving, so they got less of what they needed because someone who didn't deserve anything was getting fraud, SNAP benefits. So I just really want to thank the administration for tightening up the shot group on this stuff, for making sure that anyone who deserves benefits gets as much SNAP benefits as they can, to have the nutrition benefits for their children and their families, and that we're taking away from those who are illegally getting these benefits, who are getting double benefits or improperly using them. So thank the administration and you, Secretary Rollins, for tightening up that shot group and making sure the people that need it most get more. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
May I respond in my 12 seconds? The red states that shared their data with us, that's where we found the 200,000 dead people, the 500,000 people receiving more than one benefit. These are in the red states that have the tighter controls than the blue states. Can you imagine the fraud in these blue states once we can access the data and figure out how to make this program better? It's going to be stunning.
Thank you. Now recognize the gentlelady from Ohio, Ms. Brown, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson and Ranking Member Craig. Secretary Rollins, over the last year, this administration has repeatedly said that we are entering a golden age of American agriculture. Well, frankly, that would come as news to the farmers and ranchers I talk to in Ohio and around the country, because the only thing that is truly golden right now is the price of fertilizer, while farm country and rural America struggle. Farmers are facing trade wars and real wars, rising input costs and shrinking export markets, cuts at USDA, and tightening margins, all because of policy choices made by this administration. For many producers, the question isn't how much they're making, it's whether they'll make it through another season. So you all can call this the golden age if you want, but the numbers tell a different story, and so do the farmers living it every day. So, Madam Secretary, yes or no, are you aware that the farm bankruptcies increased by 46% last year, according to the American Farm Bureau?
Out of 1.77 million
Reclaiming
farms.
my time, it's a yes or no. And are
We
you
had a
aware that
0.017%,
USDA's own
but that's still
estimates
too
show
many.
that farm income fell roughly $25 billion following the implementation of tariffs, yes or no?
That was based on the years before
Yes
when
or
we
no?
lost our export markets. Well, it isn't a
Reclaiming
yes or
my
no
time.
question.
Are you
Corn
aware that
exports are
according
up.
to a recent Farm Bureau survey, 6 out of 10 farmers report that their financial situation is getting worse? These are simple yes or no's.
We have opened the market.
Reclaiming my time. These are facts, Secretary Rollins. So this is what a golden age of agriculture looks like, because if rising bankruptcies, falling farm income, and worsening financial conditions are a sign of a golden age, I hate to see what a downturn looks like.
There's no
And
doubt
on the
there are
trade front,
challenges,
this is
but
my time,
commodity
Secretary
prices are
Rollins. This
up,
is my time,
export markets are expanding.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. And on the trade front, the
Again, I would
President,
really appreciate, there's no
Secretary
reason to be
Rollins,
rude.
this is my time.
I know,
this
but could
is
we
my
ask in a-
time.
in a genteel-
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
In a dignified manner.
You be dignified and I'll be dignified, because this is my time. And when I ask a question, if it's a yes or no, I expect a yes or no answer.
This is why the
Secretary
American people
Rollins,
don't like Congress.
respectfully.
I'm so happy
And
to
on the
have a
trade
gentle
front, the
conversation
President
about this.
recently defended his Beijing bailout, supporting Chinese ownership of U.S. farmland by stating, and I quote, "You want to see farm prices drop? You want to see farmers lose a lot of money? Just take that out of the market." Another easy yes or no question. Madam Secretary, do you agree with the President that China should own our farmland?
China is a massive threat to America. The President has recognized this over and over again. We have to protect American farmland.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, I'd like to turn to another example where I think there is a significant gap between the story this administration is telling and the reality Americans are experiencing. Recently, you described it as good news that roughly 4.5 million people have been, quoted, moved off SNAP. Now, if those families were leaving SNAP because of wages were rising and people no longer needed assistance, I think we'd all celebrate that. But that's not what's happening. The
More
reality
people working
is,
than ever before.
that 4.5 million people were kicked off the program to
A
pay
lot
for
of them are
tax cuts
illegals.
for the wealthy through H.R. 1.
That's
Families
not
and
true.
children are not leaving the SNAP program because they're doing better.
They
They're
are.
being forced off because of eligibility changes, new administrative barriers, and states preparing for the enormous cost shifts that they know is coming. And you know this. So I'm really struggling to understand why you think pulling the rug out from under children, seniors, veterans, and families that have fallen on hard times, good news.
That
Can
we're
you
not pulling the rug
explain
out of
why
anyone.
Americans should view losing access to
Yes.
food assistance as
Can I
good
explain?
news when
That would be
grocery
amazing.
prices remain high and food
Yes.
insecurity continues to affect families across this
Yes,
country?
ma'am. I would love to explain. Thank you. So SNAP increased 40% under the last administration. The amount of fraud, as I mentioned, in the red states, 200,000 dead people.
Reclaiming my
500,000.
time. I mean, this is
Oh, no,
really
you said
part
I
of
could
a disturbing
explain.
pattern here.
Oh,
Farm
no. Okay.
bankruptcies
There's
are
no
at a
explaining.
record high,
Okay.
but the president is saying that it's a golden age. Madam Secretary, millions of Americans are going hungry, and you're saying it's a success story. The administration keeps pointing to numbers it wants Americans to see, but families, farmers, and rural communities are living with consequences of the numbers you don't want to talk about.
It's not
I
true.
really hope you can get your facts straight before January of next year.
We have more
Lady's
exports.
time
We
has
have
expired.
everything is in better shape. I just don't think you want more people to work. I think
Joey's
that you
time
want
is-
more people on government programs and not working. It's remarkable.
General's time has expired. Now recognize the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Boss, for 5
Thank you,
minutes.
Mr. Chairman. Secretary Rollins, thank you for being here. And I'm going to try to be civil and actually ask questions, and you can actually answer them. How about that?
Thank you so much.
Over the last decade, we've seen, time and time again, the solar panel companies coming into rural areas to purchase our least prime farmland, offering farmers money they can't refuse and taking land out of production. And look, I don't blame the farmers for taking the money, and I'll be the last person to tell anyone what they can do with their land. But just a few months ago, we had a proposed project pop up, and we have had many of these, but this is one in my southern counties that would cover 5,200 acres of prime farmland and take it out of production. And that's why that I proudly put into the Farm Bill the Solar Act in 2026. It establishes guidelines for USDA funding for solar panel projects and ensures that local communities have a say in that process, because I believe the federal government should not be using taxpayer dollars to incentivize and or subsidize taking our best land out of production. Secretary Rollins, do you agree with that policy?
I agree 100%.
Thank you.
And we're implementing it at
Thank
USDA
you.
every day.
As of December 2024, foreign investors held an interest in over 45 million acres of U.S. ag land, Much of that is China. In my district alone, there was more than 73,000 acres owned by foreign entities, and some in particular concerned with foreign investment near our military-based installations like Scott Air Force Base in my district that's the headquarters for the U.S. Transportation Command. The USDA has taken several steps to modernize the reporting system through the National Farm Security Action Plan. Secretary Rollins, can you outline how the USDA Action Plan will secure those projects for American farmlands?
The existential issue that we're facing, and it is China, but it's also just foreign-owned farmland. China went from 2,000 acres in 1983 to almost 300,000 acres last year. That is part of a 45 million foreign-owned farmland acre number, which is astounding. Back to the beginning of the conversation, what we are doing to ensure that we're reshoring, that we're shining a light. Agriculture has never been on CFIUS before, the Foreign Investment Committee made up of the Secretary of the Treasury and others. Never before. I kind of elbowed my way in this year. We need to get it codified, so the ag is part of that. But we've been asleep at the wheel. So yes, we are implementing that, working with our state partners. Listen, the states are the guardians at the gate. Arkansas, Sarah Sanders, North Dakota, Nebraska, they've already made major moves in this arena. Some of them are beginning to claw back, and that's the model. That's where we need to go.
So as you know, the high cost of inputs have just crushed our agriculture industry. While many products or producers have completely planted this season already for buying inputs and they have to get it done right away, how's the department working to address the input costs?
When we took over, obviously it was a perfect storm a year and 4 months ago. The agricultural trade surplus that we left in early 2021, we came back 4 years, had become a $50 billion agricultural trade deficit. Not one new trade deal. You combine that, to your question, with the average cost of inputs for our farmers increased 40% under the last administration. Interest rate 73%, labor 48%, fertilizer 36%. These are average numbers. Fuel 26%. All of that is coming down. Now, obviously, this Iranian conflict has caused a blip in that effort. We've seen nitrogen fertilizer increase 40%. We are reshoring and onshoring fertilizer in this country. I'll be breaking ground on what will be the largest ammonia plant in the world in Louisiana in about 3 weeks. We moved that from permit immediately. We have 90 other fertilizer plants going in around the country. For the short term, waiving the Jones Act, waiving some DEF requirements. Would love to get all of DEF waived, but that's over at Lee Zeldin. Opening up lines from Venezuela and other places, ensuring that our farmers have the fertilizer that they need right now. But for the long term, we will solve this and we will reshore our fertilizer in America so we don't depend on China.
Thank you for your answering the questions. Let me tell you that quite often around here we get a situation where many questions are asked, not seeking an answer, just seeking a show. And I appreciate the fact that you can answer the questions straight out. We know what was in there that with the SNAP program and how successfully it is working. I want to thank you for removing the fraud that you are. Thank you.
Thank you,
I'll
sir.
yield back.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize the gentlelady from Kansas, Ms. Davids, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, to you and to our ranking member for holding this hearing. I continue to hear from Kansas farmers and ranchers who feel like they are getting hit from every single direction. Fertilizer prices are up 30% following the president's initiation with conflict with Iran. Reckless tariff policies have added even more uncertainty, contributing to $28 billion in losses over the last crop year. Last year, farm bankruptcies in the Midwest rose by 70%. And while farmers are struggling to stay afloat, families are feeling it at the grocery store. Americans paid an average of $310 more for groceries in 2025 than they did the year before. When farmers are hurting, it doesn't stay on the farm. It affects food prices, local businesses, and the entire country and our rural communities. And that's exactly why farmers need a Department of Agriculture that they can count on. Instead, we have seen significant staffing cuts across the board. Meanwhile, as of yesterday, the new world screwworm is now present in the United States. The screwworm is a flesh-eating parasite that can devastate livestock herds, threaten ranchers' livelihoods, and ultimately drive up grocery prices even further. This is absolutely a significant threat to the American cattle industry and has the potential to further raise beef prices at the grocery store. Cattle is a $15 billion industry in Kansas. The Economic Research Service has estimated that an isolated outbreak would cost producers $732 million per year and cause $1.8 billion in losses. Yesterday, when confirming the New World screwworm case in Texas, I have to say I was struck by your use of the phrase "as expected." In the USDA post on X, I know there were projections on timing, which were referenced in your opening statements, but from talking to Kansans, I can say that ranchers don't care that it's expected. They want to know what's being done to prevent. And so my first question, if you could briefly answer, because I do want to get to my next point, why should Kansas ranchers and consumers facing high beef prices have confidence that the USDA has this under control?
Yeah, I appreciate that. By the way, I appreciate you flagging that as expected. I was actually referring to the post right below it, where a couple hours before I had said it looks like this could be, but we need to confirm. So I was actually not saying we expected it.
I appreciate that clarification.
Yeah. Well, I probably need to be a little more careful with my language, so that's a good flag. What I will say is this is a problem that our country faced in the 50s and 60s, and we beat it. We beat it all the way back to South America. There was a biological wall with Panama. It had not breached for decades and decades under the illicit cartel movement of cattle in those countries to the north, along with the open border policies. We saw a massive breach over beginning 2021, where it began to move up and into Mexico. It got to Mexico in 2023. When we got here in 2024, to your point, the models predicted that it would be on our side of the border. Nothing could stop it. By last summer, we deployed a significant amount of resources and personnel into Mexico as well as to South Texas, where the real threat is, almost immediately, while breaking ground and building the facilities that will produce the sterile flies. That's how we beat it in the 50s and 60s. That's how we'll beat it again. The challenge is we need about 400 to 500 million flies a week to push it back. And we had gotten to the point, because no one thought it was going to be a threat again, that we were only producing 100 million a week, and that's down in Panama. So that's what we're working to solve for right now. I was on the phone most of last night and through the night with the ranchers in South Texas. We do not believe this will be an infestation. We'll be able to isolate each case. We've had a year to prepare because we pushed it off a bit, and we've got the teams on the ground ready to go.
Thank you. And that actually is a great segue in terms of the work that USDA is already doing to ramp up the sterile fly production and dispersal. I have concerns about the staffing cuts at the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. For folks watching on C-SPAN, that's also APHIS. And at a time when producers are counting on the USDA to detect and contain outbreaks as quickly as possible, I'm concerned that staffing reductions can make that job harder. Can you speak to how many fewer scientists you have working at APHIS now as compared to 2024?
We have had no compromise in our ability to react and to research and to make sure we have the best scientists and data on the field. As far as the specific numbers, I will get back to you on that because I don't want to misquote it, but we have made that a priority. And in fact, last year, I think the initial round of budget suggestions from the White House in the budget included those cuts, and eventually we changed that so there was no cut to the actual research side of the national security issue, which is animal pest and health.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate. We'll follow up.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Expired. Now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Madam Secretary, I too would like to thank you for coming with answers, not excuses, or I'll get back to yous. Your agency recently published a preliminary report analyzing SNAP participant data from 29 state agencies. Across these 29 states, the department found nearly 450,000 cases of dummy Social Security numbers, 26,333 cases of no Social Security number, and 185,986 cases of deceased individuals receiving SNAP. State agencies are already required to collect and verify SNAP applicants' Social Security numbers and run checks with Social Security death master files. What is your department doing to improve oversight and ensure these states are complying with the law?
It's such an important question, and I appreciate the opportunity to actually talk about it. The first hour of the first day after I was sworn in on February 13th, we sent a letter to every governor in America, and it wasn't a political letter. It legitimately was the increase in spending in SNAP is 40% in just the last few years between 2021 and 2023. There has to be a better way. Please partner with us. All of the red states, the red governors, and 2 blue governors said, yes, we want to do this better. We do believe there's massive fraud. The way the system works is that the federal government dumps the money to the states, and then there's no accountability, there's no partnership. So we really wanted to change that because there had been zero accountability. The numbers you just cited are just from the red states. That's what I mentioned earlier. It's astounding to think 200,000 people using dead people's Social Security numbers, more than 500,000, or almost 500,000, getting more than one benefit. And these are in the red states. I grew up in Texas policy. We have so many guardrails on to try to stop from this. So the blue states, most of them sued us, didn't want to share the data, even though these are federal tax dollars. And we'll continue to root it out. The vice president is leading the way, but the American taxpayer expects us to spend their dollar to make sure that we're focusing on those that really need it, and people aren't buying Ferraris and living in fancy houses and milking off the taxpayer.
Thank you. And for years, for the last 4 or 5 years, I've asked questions about non-citizens receiving SNAPs. I basically get mocked by my colleagues that this is not possible, that it's very rare, despite there being 11 exceptions. One of them being if you're 18 or under, you automatically qualify. If you seek asylum and get it, you automatically qualify, and I can go on, you know the list of all the things that are there. And yet, you know, these concerns of mine were dismissed as unfounded, yet USDA data now show that in fiscal year 2022, approximately 1.5 million non-citizens received SNAP benefits, totaling $4.2 billion in payouts. And I'll remind you all that 2022, the border was still wide open for an additional 2 years, and so I'm sure that number is going to be revised. So the question is, given the program's eligibility restrictions, how did so many non-citizens qualify for benefits, and how many may have received them improperly, and what steps is USDA taking to ensure taxpayer-funded assistance is reserved for those who are legally eligible?
Of the 4.3 million that we have moved off of SNAP, whether it's through better jobs, better pay, through stricter eligibility, our best numbers show that a significant, probably more than 30% of that 4.3 million were illegal aliens. And so again, that was one of the first steps we took to try to clamp down. But again, the challenge is the blue states will not partner with us to try to get back to where we need to be, and that's taxpayer funding American citizens. But we're on it. We're in litigation on that right now. I believe we'll be successful, and we'll get to the point where we can ensure that those that are receiving the dollars need it, are worthy, and are American citizens.
And again, I praise you because you've done more since you've taken office than I've seen done in the last, well, I've been on this committee for 16 years.
Thank you.
And I just want to put in a public service message that Republicans are not against SNAP. We are
That's
for
right.
SNAP. We are for feeding the needy. But when you write a farm bill for 5 years, you need to know what it costs. You need to know where it's going. And you need to, I think most everyone can agree that American citizens should be taken care of first, and then we figure out ways, you know, how we deal with the others. But I'm just very grateful that you've acknowledged this. You've come to us with answers. You're coming to us with statistics. And I just can't thank you enough for all the work that you're doing. So keep up the good work.
Thank
and
you.
I yield back.
Thank you so much.
Would gentleman yield?
The gentleman would yield.
I just wanted to share with my friends, because I've heard a lot of blame on the Trump administration for causing the economic challenges. So we all acknowledge that our farmers are facing. I want to remind all my colleagues, it was in December of 2024, that was the last administration where this committee was very influential in getting that first $10 billion in economic harm assistance. Economic harm was well documented. It had occurred. You know, and I'm not pointing fingers at administrations, but there are some on this committee that will want to do that for whatever purpose. The economic harm started under the last administration because it was in December of 2024 that we achieved that first $10 billion, which was a historical first, actually.
Yeah.
With that, pleased to recognize the gentlelady from Oregon, Ms. Salinas, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, ranking member, and good morning, Madam Secretary. Thank you for being here. I really want to just get across the harm and the despair that my growers are feeling in the Willamette Valley of Oregon. And you know this. They're getting squeezed, low crop prices, high input costs, and a trade war that has decimated our export markets. And I wish I didn't have to blame this administration, but I do, and this Congress. On top of all that, prices of urea, major nitrogen fertilizer, have gone up 30% since the war in Iran began. That's over $250 more per ton. And thank you for your comments about the Louisiana plant. I think that's great. Are you aware that roughly just a yes or no answer, are you aware that roughly 30% of the world's fertilizers move through the Strait of Hormuz?
Oh, the yes and no's are so hard. Yes, but little of that comes to America. However, the reason the price has increased is because so many other countries use it through the strait, and that's caused the prices to go up.
Okay. And I'm sure, again, yes or no, are you aware that fertilizer prices have risen sharply since the war in Iran began?
For nitrogen, yes. For some of the others, no, but for nitrogen, yes.
Okay, so what advice did you give the president on the agricultural implications before strikes on Iran began?
Thank you for not yes and no. Very quickly, though, because I know you have more questions. The president is acutely aware of the farm economy. It is why he's fighting so hard for these 19 new trade deals, a 40% decrease in the ag deficit. We're going to have record-breaking exports this year, had some record-breaking last year. The inputs we inherited, and even though the fertilizer's high after the Iranian conflict, it will go back down, but that actually doesn't even reach nearly the peak of the increase of the cost of fertilizer in the last administration for other reasons as well. So this is a long-running problem with fertilizer, why the onshoring is so important.
But did you give the president any advice before he struck Iran on the impact to American agriculture?
I am constantly talking to this president. I have to believe, we laugh that there's been more conversation about fertilizer, screwworm, and soybeans in this Oval Office than perhaps any Oval Office ever in the history. He is aware and has talked about the short-term challenges to make sure that America is safe for the long term.
Okay, my growers, and I think American growers, are really feeling the impact. If you haven't seen the Farmer and Rancher Policy Sentiment Survey, I just want to read some of the most striking findings, and this is 1,000 growers across 44 states. Input costs are crushing American farmers. 78% of farmers name machinery and input costs, fertilizer, fuel, seed, chemicals, among the top 3 challenges facing their operation. This goes back to the war in Iran. It's hitting farmers in the wallet, another concern. 94% of farmers say the war with Iran is impacting their business by raising fertilizer costs, energy costs, or both. Are you aware that diesel prices in Oregon are over $6 a gallon right now and are really harming my farmers?
There is no doubt that these inputs are causing more struggle in the farm country. I do want to be fair, though, and say that in the last administration, the cost of inputs did increase 40%.
We're claiming my time. We are not talking about the last administration.
But that's what we're building on. That's what we're trying to fix.
I'm comparing 26 over 25 and 25 over 24. Our baseline is 24. We have not improved.
We have.
Reclaiming my time because I want to make sure we get this on the record as well. The Section 232 tariffs have been in place for 14 months. And I just read that President Trump has lowered those tariffs on tractors, combines, and other farm equipment to 15% from 25% as part of the Section 232 tariffs. However, ag trade deficit hit $43.7 billion in 2025. That was a 37% increase over 2024.
But ma'am, that's because of the policies from 24. This year we're making up for it. We've cut that deficit in half. We're going to have record export
in 25. And China's retaliatory tariffs reduced ag exports by $14.9 billion in a single year. And we have a promise from China to purchase more soybeans in the future. That is not flying with my farmers right now. A hollow promise from China. My grass seed losses in Oregon are big, and we cannot continue to afford this.
Well, again, exports are up. We've cut the trade deficit in half. What was $45 billion is now down to about $22 billion. Corn's up, dairy's up, tree nuts are up, ethanol's up, sorghum is up, soybeans are up. China has agreed to purchase
thank you. To reclaim my
25 million
time.
metric tons, $17 billion. Plus, we've opened up 19
President
other
promised
markets.
to lower costs for farmers. Fertilizer's up. Farmers are losing money on their crops. and your department has no timeline for fixing it.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
we
I
have a
yield back.
massive timeline, actually. We'll follow up with the timeline.
General Lee's
We're-
time has
We've got really
expired.
good timeline.
Now recognize, now I recognize the birthday boy, Dr. Baird, for 5 minutes.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here and for all that you do with the programs through the USDA to help our farmers and ranchers as well as the agricultural industry. And you know, our constituents really appreciated you coming to the great Hoosier state, so we thank you for that. And we also thank you for some of the programs that you've been able to enhance and improve on. So my first question deals with research, education, and economics, because I'm a great advocate for research and the importance of the land-grant universities. And so when you look at that REE mission area and the restructuring that took place in USDA's research programs to Purdue University in my district, that brought about $3 million in funding and several federal research positions. So I want to thank you for the work in that area as well, that we very much appreciated. And so then I'd like to give you the opportunity to discuss or share your visions about partnerships like USDA and the institutions like Purdue and other land-grant universities. And I'd like to include the Cooperative Extension Service in that as well. And just give you the opportunity to talk about crop science and precision agriculture, as well as any of the other workforce development that has to do with the research, education, and economics.
Thank you so much for that, Congressman. And I know the reorganization has certainly, anytime you try to move parts of a big organization out into the country, you're going to have a lot of questions about that. But the incredible, to speak about Indiana for just a second, I started talking to some of your team and some of your people back in Indiana as we were looking at where to move the research hub. And, you know, we have some extraordinary researchers, but most of them don't want to be in Washington, D.C. Most of them are PhDs, et cetera, that are studying crop science and studying the screwworm. They want to be affiliated and next to a great research university like a Purdue or like a Texas A&M or whatever school it may be. And so the move of the REE out to Indianapolis, the middle of the country, closer to our farmers and closer to our researchers, I believe will be a massive value add for all of the challenges that these researchers are researching and providing solutions. They're the best in the world, and now we're hopefully going to make it even better.
So thank you for that, and I appreciate that. You know, I think it gives, when you go to the other universities and other locations, it really gives you the opportunity to get different perspective. And thank you for mentioning Texas A&M. I knew you'd get that in there.
It took me an hour and a half, but I got it.
You bet.
2 hours.
But anyway, then my next question deals to give you the opportunity regarding hemp. You know, I've proposed legislation that would provide, you know, we had that back in the 2018 Farm Bill. We mentioned hemp production, and some of the producers actually moved in that direction. In fact, I think there was like $739 million in 2025 that, or in 2025, that contributed to our GDP. And so that was up 64% from the single year in the prior year. So you got any thoughts on what we might be doing in regard to the hemp and where you stand? And there's a November 12th deadline coming up. You got any thoughts about what we might need to do or where we head in that? I'm talking about the industrial hemp.
The industrial.
The fiber production, because that has to do with turning it into, you know, methane and that sort of thing. So.
That's right. It's my understanding that the 26 appropriations bill doesn't affect that, but I hear you that the importance of understanding and doing economic assessments and really, you know, we've got good understandings of a lot of our commodities. I don't know that we have enough understanding yet. So let me circle back to our team and then let's schedule some time to talk that through.
Thank you. And my last question, I just can't resist mentioning RUTF, the ready-to-use therapeutic foods. You know, that's an ag production. But when you see that in application in some of those African countries and what it does for the malnourished children, I think that's fantastic. And it's an American product. And so I just have to get that into I think I've only got 24 seconds, so I just wanted to mention that and get it on your radar, and I know it is.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah.
Thank you. It is remarkable, and I think there's a lot we can learn from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thanks. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I'm going to recognize Mr. Sorensen momentarily, Mr. Sorensen momentarily here. The Secretary did request, and in consultation with the...
We can keep going.
Well,
Yeah, we're good. We'll go another hour and
okay.
maybe check back in.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Recognize Mr. Sorensen from Illinois for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary. It should come as no surprise that these are hard times in farm country. I was on a farm in my district just on Monday, and I hear the same fears all across my district. The price of fertilizer, the price of seed, herbicide, diesel, food, healthcare, all of those topics came up on Monday on one farm. According to a recent report from the Wall Street Journal, Americans are now falling behind on $1.25 trillion worth of credit card bills. It's a new record. Add to that the administration's tariff and trade war. Producers have access to fewer markets overseas. Without an end to the president's war in Iran, costs will continue at unacceptable levels. And with the cost of diesel, it's only a matter of time before our groceries become more unaffordable, which goes against President Trump's promise when he sought the office in 2024. I'm as cognizant as ever before to do what the American people need us to do. Farm bankruptcies are up 130% compared to last year and are predicted to rise. This proves that the administration is failing. My district went through hell during the farm crisis of the 1980s. In some places in the Quad Cities, we haven't even recovered, and yet there is a risk of another farm crisis that is rising on your watch. This has nothing to do with either side of the aisle. It's about identifying a problem and doing what's right to find solutions. So, Madam Secretary, do you believe that farmers are better under your administration than they were 2 years ago?
Well, yes, I do, because of the 19 new markets that have been opened up,
I disagree, and I
record-breaking
want to move
exports
on.
that are coming.
Do you believe
and
it's time? Do you believe it's time? Is a yes or no question. Do you
the
believe it's
input
time for the
prices that will
United
come
States
down.
Department of Agriculture to course correct to prevent a future farm crisis? Yes or no?
Well, of course, everything we do every day is to do that. Yes,
Great.
Thank you.
Farmers are paying through the roof for essential inputs like nitrogen and phosphorus, and you just talked about this with my colleague from Oregon. On Monday, I heard from farmers that anhydrous ammonia was once $300 a ton, and now it's $1,300. With the war in Iran, there's no telling how high these prices could go, let alone diesel costs. The White House has said that this is just a blip. Do you believe the administration has done a satisfactory job helping struggling farmers, yes or no?
I do believe, there's no doubt they're struggling, but I do believe that, yes, they know that we're fighting for them every day. The bankruptcy numbers, every farm we lose is heartbreaking. We've gone from, out of 1.8 million farmers, about 315 have filed for bankruptcy, which is a lower 10-year average than normal.
What else is heartbreaking is the fact that the farmers didn't ask
we're
for
working with each
the
of the
global
315.
trade destabilization that this administration has done. We are not doing enough to keep farmers afloat. Nitrogen.
Actually, we've cut the agricultural trade deficit in half in 1 year.
Nitrogen inputs for fertilizer up 40%. Phosphorus prices are up around 24%. Do you believe that we should have more homegrown, made in America fertilizer? Yes or no?
100%, yes.
I'm in agreement. Let's work on that. I have a
Let's do it.
homegrown fertilizer
We've got
act.
an
Let's get it
amazing
across the
plan. You
finish
come
line.
on and help us. I'd love that.
Yes or no, is the administration working on developing a long-term strategy for national security and supply chain risk as it relates to agricultural inputs and the general farm economy as you've created additional instability in the Middle East?
Well, yes, 100%. The national security piece of this is so very important. Obviously, the instability in the Middle East will soon stabilize and be more stable than ever before. But I'm not the foreign policy team, so I don't want to get out of my lane.
Do you believe that the current funding levels for CSP and EQIP are sufficient to meet the current demand?
The current levels for CSP and EQIP are sufficient to meet the current demand. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Is it your opinion that farmers are supportive of funding cuts to CSP and EQIP?
So the challenge there is that the previous administration had a very different value set than we did. It was a lot of investment in renewable energy, solar, and I know you and I could probably have a long debate about this, but that was the priority of the prior.
But that was then, and this is now.
Well, and now the values are different. We don't want to cover good farmland and solar panels. It's not our priority. We want to keep prime farmland farming and not put Chinese solar panels on them.
My time's
yes.
running short. I wanted to let you know that I hear from so many neighbors in Illinois about the horrific cuts to SNAP. In the land of Lincoln, more than 200,000 have lost food assistance on your watch, and nationally that's 4 million. I think this is a moral issue, at least it is to me, that we do better. And what's happening on your watch is troubling. And I expect that going forward that you will do better and right by the people that we serve, because they didn't ask for a lot of the hardships that they're having to endure. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Feenstra, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson, for holding this hearing today. Secretary Rollins, I just want to thank you for being here, and more importantly, for all the work you've done to put our rural communities back at the forefront of the USDA mission. I applaud your efforts. I think about what has happened over the last several years. You've had a lot of challenges. I think of the egg industry, and we took that head on and said, all right, we're going to make changes, and we did. I think of what's happening, with trade right now. All right, we're cutting our trade deficit in half.
That's right.
In half. That's
19
incredible.
new markets, big markets
Huge.
have opened up. Yeah.
Massive. And then opening 19 new trade deals, right? I think you said 19. Now, just a quick note, all right? We don't want to talk about the past, but I just got to mention in a minute. You know how many trade deals were done under Biden?
Zero.
Zero. Right. So it's a little disingenuous from my colleagues when they go down that rabbit hole, because I'm so appreciative. I also want to say I appreciate your support that we finally delivered for all farmers across the country, E15 in the U.S. House. And I know you helped on this effort. We passed the bill. This is dramatically going to help at the fuel pump. So can you just talk about this? Can you discuss how permanent year-round E15 supports both affordability and energy dominance, and why getting this signed into law is so important for rural America?
When we walked in a year and 4 months ago, I knew the challenges internationally, to your point. Not one new trade deal, a $45 billion agricultural trade deficit after we left with a surplus, the cost of inputs under the last administration on average 40%. What I didn't fully appreciate or understand was the opportunity to open up the domestic market in this country. And you and others were very quick to come in and I'm a Texas girl, right? I mean, I've been focusing on cattle and cotton my whole career, but what I learned and have since become such a huge cheerleader, advocate, supporter for is the importance of E15 and what that will do to support our farmers and to support that domestic market. And also this year we're going to have, ethanol exports are going to be up 20%, corn exports are going to be up 22%. The world is opening up as well to these great products our American farmers are producing. So it's been an honor to be part of that.
Well, thank you so much. And I hear this. I actually heard NPR do a story, and it was laughable. They said, well, it's food for fuel, and it makes no such sense. It's not. It's actually, right. I mean, we have distillers' grain, we feed it back. We have value added in all the different oils that are coming out of ethanol. It's just phenomenal what's happening. And what's happening is the talking points in the 80s and 90s is what people are using against it, and things have changed so much in the last 20 years. So I appreciate you being an advocate for it. So I just want, I got a couple of minutes left, but we've talked about fertilizer. I know you're doing so much on this front. I just want to say thank you. Can you just tell everybody, I know you just sort of talked about it again, but can you just tell everybody what you guys are doing to make sure that we continue to look at fertilizer and how we're going to slowly get this price going down?
Yes, absolutely. The idea that we import half of our fertilizer from countries like China and Russia is sort of stunning. Another statistic I didn't fully appreciate or understand. We have offshored that over a number of years, and so we are subject to other countries. For the short term, of course, we've waived the Jones Act. We've opened up lines from Venezuela. We've deregulated, taken some of the DEF rules off for urea, et cetera. But for the long term, the opportunity here to reshore, to invest, and if I may, I'm really proud of our entire cabinet. I call Chris Wright and I say, we need funding to invest in these fertilizer plants. Fertilizer is energy. And he said, Brooke, I will be there. Tell me what you need. And so out of the energy fund of Doug Burgum and Chris Wright's energy group, Energy Dominance, they are now investing in fertilizer plants in America. I call Howard Lutnick. I said, Howard, we need help on the fertilizer front. You've got that big investment fund through the president's negotiations. He said, Brooke, tell me when and where, and I'll be there. Lee Zeldin, we need help. And I think that is a real testament to our cabinet and to this administration, that agriculture is not in a silo. We are working across the entire administration, all the way from the top, the Oval Office, to do everything we can to solve a lot of these massive challenges.
Yeah, I just thank you. I know you're all over it. The cabinet's all over it, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you so much. We're working so hard. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Vasquez, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome back, Secretary Rollins. First, I have to add my name to the list of members on both sides who are concerned with the New World screwworm case that was recently documented in Texas that could devastate our cattle industry and should be and must be contained and dealt with immediately. This Tuesday, I convened my agricultural advisory group that consists of farmers, ranchers, food banks, researchers, dairy producers, young farmers, state and local leaders in New Mexico. I created this group about 3 years ago to ensure that from farm to table, New Mexico has a voice on this committee and has a voice in Congress. And so this week, I asked members of that committee, if you had a chance to ask Secretary Rollins a question, what would that question be? And so today, I'll be asking you some of those questions. First, nearly every member of this advisory group raised concerns about USDA staffing shortages and the department's ongoing reorganization efforts. They told me that local FSA and NRCS offices are already stretched thin. They're making it harder for producers to access contracts, disaster assistance, conservation programs, and technical support. Secretary, could you explain what steps USDA is taking to maintain service levels for rural states like New Mexico while these staffing and restructuring changes are underway?
Yes, in fact, I'm sorry you and I haven't had a chance to discuss this, but I have been in constant communication with your senator from New Mexico, and in fact, to the point where he'll call and say, we're a little bit short in this office, and we'll adjust or make sure that we're solving for those issues. New Mexico, of course, right next to my home state of Texas, we have a lot in common and have been paying very close attention to the screwworm, but also to your point to the FSA offices, making sure we're supporting your farmers, the NRCS offices, and then of course the Forest Service is a really, really important part of your state. So if you are getting a different story on that, if you're hearing that there's not enough of whatever it is that is necessary, our wildland firefighters, which is a really important piece for New Mexico, we are actually 98% full hiring for this wildfire season, which is ahead of last year and way ahead of the year before we got here.
Thank you, Secretary.
So I'm very focused on that.
Thank you
But
so
please
much.
let me know if you're hearing differently.
I absolutely will make sure that you get those reports. We've been hearing this for some time, so thank you so much. Secondly, I support specialty crop growers. I come from the land of green and red chili, and we're so proud to have the chili capital of the world in our district. But our partners at the New Mexico Farm and Livestock Bureau, the specialty crop growers, they're still waiting for the Assistance for Specialty Crop Farmers Program funds to hit their bank accounts, and some have been waiting for over 6 months. They say they can't handle any more delays, and it's putting their businesses at risk. When can they expect their payments?
Is this the bridge assistance?
Yes.
Okay. So a quick update on that. We announced that specifically. We increased it more than 50%, up to $1.6 billion.
Yes.
Applications are now open. We'll be moving those out. If the applications come in, we're moving that money out very, very quickly. So again, if any of your farmers have trouble, have them contact their FSA state director, who will let me know, and we'll start moving that out. But as long as they're filling out the paperwork online or in the office, we should be moving that out immediately.
Thank you. I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and we'll update you on that process.
Yeah,
I
please.
appreciate that. Next, I have a question from a partner of ours, Roadrunner Food Bank, and this is the most prominent food bank in New Mexico. I want to be clear. Concerns about cuts to food assistance were raised by members across the group because these dollars don't just affect the food bank, but as you know, they support working families, farmers, food banks, and grocery stores in rural communities. You have an op-ed that you wrote April 1st in which you stated that more than 3.3 million people have fallen off of SNAP since the passage of the Republican tax law. However, USDA has also terminated what you call the Household Food Security Report, which is critical in tracking this data and the impact of these cuts. Could you explain how you plan to collect data to track the ongoing impact of those SNAP
Yes,
cuts?
of course. We have 6 other surveys that move across USDA and HHS, and working in concert. What we found is that particular survey, as we were looking to make USDA more efficient, actually was duplicative, and that we weren't getting the right information that we needed, and that it was easily adjusted in a way that maybe perhaps didn't tell the whole story. So we're working to make that better and give us better data so we can better serve the communities.
Thank you, Secretary. Okay, last question here before finishing off. This is about GusNIP, and as you know, GusNIP is very important to rural communities, especially farmers markets and those as retail outlets for local farmers. Can you commit to maintaining and expanding support for GusNIP?
I do agree it's important. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if we'll follow up, and I'd love to have a conversation with you about that. I do agree that support is important.
Thank you so much. And last time we spoke here on this committee, I did invite you to New Mexico. As you mentioned, we are neighbors and would love to have you in the state. So looking forward to following up with your visit to our state. Thank
I
you
would
so
love
much.
that. You've got a couple lettuce farmers that I talk about all the time in Albuquerque that it produce 250,000 head of organic lettuce that go into your schools and hospital. It's incredible. So
Terrific. Thank
I'd love
you,
to go back
Secretary.
and visit them too.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Mrs. Miller, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for your tireless work in protecting our producers.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary, you and President Trump have brought about historic wins for our farmers and ranchers. Under this administration, more than $60 billion in U.S. agricultural purchases have been committed, coupled with trade deals covering over 40% of all U.S. agricultural exports. These deals include trade agreements with countries like Argentina, Bangladesh, Guatemala, and El Salvador. Other ag deals include agreements with Japan, the UK, and China. It is clear that the agricultural trade deficit of the Biden administration is nearing its end, and that has been painful, and we're just so grateful for the reversing of that. In January of 2025, the United States had a $50 billion deficit, but Madam Secretary, you and President Trump have decreased that trade deficit by 42% in less than 2 years. Again, thank you. This administration has also championed real tax savings for our farmers. The Working Families Tax Cut, which every Democrat voted against, increases expensing limits to allow farmers to immediately write off new equipment. Under the same legislation, the 20% small business tax deduction is now permanent. This will allow farmers, ranchers, and other producers to keep more of their hard-earned income and reinvest in their family farms. But perhaps most importantly, the near elimination of the death tax will benefit more than 2 million farms, allowing family farms to remain in the family. Madam Secretary, under your leadership, the USDA has recognized that food security is national security. Last summer, your department, along with others, released the National Farm Security Action Plan, in which the plan lays out important steps to curtail China's purchasing of prime farmland, enhance our agricultural supply chain, which very excited about bringing our fertilizer production back, and end waste, fraud, and abuse in federal nutrition programs. This action plan shows the administration takes food security seriously. USDA is once again working for the farmers and not expanding its bloated bureaucracy. It's great to see the USDA get out of the marble offices of Washington, D.C. and focus on real America, on our rural communities and farm families, especially in Illinois. And I really appreciate what Deputy Secretary Vadden said, I will not apologize for getting a better bang for the American taxpayer's buck. We love that.
Yeah.
Madam Secretary, your continued work in rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal nutrition programs is greatly appreciated. I know that in my home state of Illinois, they are uncooperative, refusing federal audits of SNAP. It's clear that Democrats consistently oppose transparency. This effort to stop SNAP reform is just proof of that. Can you please provide an update on SNAP oversight, specifically your audit work with blue states like Illinois?
Thank you. It's so good to see you. Just very quickly, if I can, I think we have to recognize the work that this committee did in the Working Families Tax Cut Act to get so much of agriculture, what would have been and was left out of many years of not getting a farm bill in the last administration. You all fought for it. You got it in. You got it to the president's desk. Of course, the president and I were very supportive of that. But that is an incredible achievement of this committee and the leaders on this committee, the largest investment in rural America in American history. And so I think that's a really important point to point out, and all of you worked so hard on that. So thank you. On the food stamp, the SNAP piece of that, again, it has been a big mover in the news. The first hour of my first day sworn in at USDA, we sent a letter to every governor in America asking them to partner with us, that the American people, but also the people that took that deserved those programs and participated in those programs deserved better, that the program had grown 40% in the last administration. There was no accountability. The federal tax dollars flowed into every state, but we didn't know. I was stunned to find out that we had no idea how they were being spent, if they were being spent appropriately, if illegal aliens were taking them, if people driving Ferraris were on them. And sure enough, in just the red states that responded, 200,000 dead people, 500,000 people getting more than one benefit. And these are the red states. Imagine when we get through litigation and we finally get the data from California, New York, and your state, what we're going to find.
Yeah, well, we're looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman.
I think I now recognize the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Buzinski, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Craig, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for being here today. I do appreciate that. I represent the 13th District in Illinois and Central and Southern Illinois, and what I hear a lot from farmers is around issues of uncertainty, specifically around FSA, REAP grants, some of the agricultural research initiatives that some of that funding appears to be frozen. So I wanted to kind of take those kind of line by line.
Sure.
FSA, I really appreciate what you said. No offices are closing. That's really important because you know the importance of FSA as that like real direct line to our growers. We have heard though that about 25% of the staff have been lost under FSA. So obviously you have the offices, but you need the staff. And so I just would be curious, I wanted to mention that I also understand USDA has pointed to the One Farmer, One File initiative as a way to streamline information and improve service. And I appreciate the goal behind that effort. But at the end of the day, a streamlined file doesn't help much if there isn't enough staff in the office, as I mentioned. So what specific steps is USDA taking through this reorganization plan to rebuild staffing capacity, in particular at the FSA offices?
So the FSA offices continue to be a priority for USDA, making sure that our farmers have what they need. But the One Farmer, One File, to be clear, before we had it, we had about 5,000 applications come through, and we responded in person through FSA anywhere between a month and 2 months, sometimes hopefully quicker, but that was it. When we released One Farmer, One File with one of the programs last year, we had 57,000 farmers within 5 days receive their funding. So including myself, I'm in my 50s, my age farmer and older probably isn't that excited about getting on their phone and responding, but the younger farmers are really taking advantage of it. Having said that, we really, I think you and I would agree, fully realize it will never take the place of the FSA offices, and making sure those are staffed appropriately and they have the resources to respond to the farmers quickly is one of my top priorities, and we continue to work state by state to ensure that. If you're hearing differently, would you just let me know personally?
Okay. Thank you. I wanted to shift gears to REAP in particular. particular. Illinois farmers and rural small businesses who applied for REAP grants in good faith, some of whom have already completed their projects. They're reporting to me they're now in limbo with no clarity around when and whether they're going to be reimbursed. So I just am curious from the USDA perspective, you know, it seems like some of these grants have been withheld from farmers and small businesses, in particular in Illinois and across the country, who really did apply in good faith for these dollars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So specifically, do you know how many Illinois applicants are currently in the backlog? What is the department's target date for completing the regulatory update? And will farmers who already submitted applications be required to reapply, or will their prior submissions be honored?
So if there were contracts signed, that's a different category than yes. A lot of them, there were no contracts signed, and they came very quickly at the end of the last administration. And I know I mentioned this before, but so much of the Biden USDA REAP was really focused on solar panels on farmland, and our administration just has a different value set. We want everyone to reapply. If in fact, so about 83% of the applications that are in limbo were focused on solar panels, Chinese solar panels on the farmland. We haven't completely said no to solar. We can put it on your barn. You can put it on non-farmland and make sure it's American made. So that's what the recalibration that's happening right now. And I don't have the Illinois numbers, but we'll follow up on that and have that conversation.
Okay, that would be great. I do want to just ask, I've got limited time here, just really quickly, if I could ask you about, on March 27th, EPA issued the final Set 2 rule under the Renewable Fuel Standard. This rule which had strong bipartisan support, will help set the standard for biofuel production moving forward, and is already supporting rural economies. The Set 2 final rule generates over $10 billion for rural economies. I'm just curious, when USDA's feedstock rule, when coupled with the 45Z clean fuel credit, will play a similarly significant role in farm country. What is the status of that rule, and when do you expect it could be completed?
This summer. It's imminent.
Okay, great. If I could squeeze in one more question.
Please.
On AI farms.
Very quickly.
You're giving me time?
Actually, just submit it for the record. We're out of time.
Okay, thanks. I yield back. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Secretary Rollins, thank you for being here today, and thank you for your leadership in supporting farmers, ranchers, and ag producers across America. It was an honor to have you visit the big 1st District of Kansas days after you were confirmed last February. In one of my first ever meetings with President Trump in the Oval Office, I distinctly remember him telling me of his love for American farmers, and I know that you share that same passion. Over the last year, you and President Trump have led the way in supporting rural America, and I look forward to continuing to work with you as we continue to make agriculture great again. I also appreciate your previous comments this morning and all the work that you've been doing to fight New World Screwworm. We all know this is a all hands on deck moment, and appreciate your great leadership. Couple of quick questions. Last year, I introduced legislation to move back to USDA, a program that is not only dear and dear to Kansas farmers, but also is vital to ag producers across the United States. The Food for Peace program has long supported American agriculture, while also helping to feed millions of people around the world. It was originally housed within the USDA when it was created over 70 years ago, and my bill, which was included in H.R. 7567, the Farm Food and National Security Act, would return it back to its roots, ensuring its long-term sustainability. I appreciate your working with State Department to temporarily administer the Food for Peace program while the long-term solution is being worked out in the Senate. How is USDA currently administering the Food for Peace program?
Well, I think we're very proud of the opportunity to administer the program. We believe that it is important, especially for our farmers, and you've been such a great advocate for that. Our Undersecretary, Luke Lindbergh, who we will soon lose to Rome, he's taking Cindy McCain's place if everything works out. We're really going to miss him, but he has been vital in making sure that transition has been smooth. It is our understanding, or my understanding, that that program has continued apace, and that we're doing it with a whole lot less employees. I think maybe from 300 employees at state down to about 30 at USDA, but without compromising the program itself. So if you heard differently, Congressman, please let me know, but I think we're very pleased with what's happening so far.
Great, and I would agree with you. An incredibly important program for American agriculture. Good for our farmers, good for our shippers, and good for the mouths, that need those calories on the other end, of the world where this food goes. What thoughts do you have, Madam Secretary, on continuing to prioritize the procurement of U.S.-grown commodities and ready-to-use therapeutic food?
Well, as I think we discussed just a little while ago, I mean, we haven't, it's funny, last year at this time, we spent a lot more time on making America healthy again. We haven't spent as much time. I think maybe the temperature has come down, and we realize that the Making America Healthy Again movement, along with agriculture, do go hand in hand. And while the primary beneficiaries will be the American citizen, and our children, that the almost as important, the beneficiaries will be our great farmers and ranchers, and the importance that they play in that. Of course, alongside so many of our farmers that produce great commodities that go to feed livestock around the world, or go into the fuel tanks here in America. There's an incredible balance there, and for me, being able to advocate and work the policy and to try to drive more markets, bigger markets, whether it's across the world or here in America, must continue. But I do believe when you put the Make America Healthy Again movement, and including cotton, we talked about not just eating but what we wear, layer on top of where we are in agriculture, I think that the opportunities abound ahead for us, and we've got to keep taking advantage of all of that.
I could not agree more. Last question, Secretary Rollins. I appreciate you hosting a group of us 2 weeks ago to discuss the importance of increasing domestic fertilizer storage and competition, so farmers have more choices to better access affordable inputs. As you know, fertilizer prices are one of the biggest pressure points facing our farmers right now in the struggling farm economy. Can you share with us some of the projects USDA is currently working on to deliver real solutions for farmers across America to decrease fertilizer prices and overall farm inputs?
It's really national security, so I'll start there. The idea that we're relying on China and Russia and other countries to produce our fertilizer for this country, more than half of our fertilizer, should terrify all of us, and I think that's come sort of in the spotlight recently with the Middle East, and that will resolve itself soon. We'll get back to normal. But you were so great, and standing up there, not just with me, waving my hands about fertilizer, the fact that we had 4 cabinet secretaries there alongside me, leaders from both sides of Congress standing beside us, General Butch Graham, head of the Army Corps of Engineers, Pete Hegseth, General in charge of the Army Corps, there to talk about let's permit fast and not get caught up in the permitting process to get these fertilizer projects online, whether it's the largest ammonia plant in the world that's about to break ground in Louisiana, or you've got a couple in your home state that are smaller, but that USDA is supporting to build the infrastructure out, a couple of $2 and $3 million projects. We've got dozens that are going in around the country right now. That is the solution, and that's what we're driving toward. And I believe it will change a lot of things for the better for farm country.
And I appreciate the whole government approach, as we all work together to drive down costs, which eventually, impacts the consumer. So
that's right.
Thank you for all your tireless effort.
Thank you so much.
Next, I'm going to recognize the gentleman from Illinois, my friend Mr. Jackson, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary. I appreciate you being before us today, and thank you for your great works. I would like to discuss with you a matter that is not simply about agriculture, but it's about trust, it's about capital, and ultimately about whether America intends to harvest the full potential of all of its people. For generations, black farmers have faced documented discrimination within the very institution designed to support them. The story is not merely historical, it's also economic. As you very well know, the history of the discrimination that has been proven by the Department of Agriculture against African American farmers has been a challenge. The history of black farmers in the United States Department of Agriculture is not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of the record. It's documented in law. For decades, black farmers were denied loans, delayed access, assistance, and denied opportunities that were routinely extended to others. The consequences have been devastating, from land lost, wealth diminished, family legacies broken. The federal government has acknowledged these injustices. Settlements have been reached in the past. Reforms were promised but not executed. And many believed that the nation had finally begun the difficult work of restoring the trust. The issue before us today is not simply about whether a contract can be canceled. The issue is whether the government may induce reliance, encourage participation, and make commitments only to withdraw them after farmers made decisions based upon those promises. When a farmer, as you know, signs a contract, hires workers, purchases equipment, and plants crops in reliance upon a government commitment, that commitment becomes more than paperwork. It becomes an obligation of trust. The Constitution requires from the government, justice requires consistency from government, and democracy requires confidence that rules will not change after the game has begun. Madam Secretary, black farmers have spent generations asking whether they will receive equal treatment from the Department of Agriculture. The question I would have was, should they have to ask that question in 2026? I would like to have this submitted into the records. There's ongoing litigation, lawsuits with the Department of USDA over canceled contracts. Many of this was fed into programs under DOGE. I wish Mr. Elon Musk were here today. This was not done under your watch. This was done under someone unscrupulous and scurrilous and lascivious. Yes, sir, Chairman. And it has made major challenges. I would like to know, what is it that we can do together to restore these grants that were cut, that had already been approved? Many of the administrators that signed these contracts, that asked these farmers to put the language in them, still have their jobs, and the farmers are suffering. In addition to all the other things of food, fuel, and fertilizing and costs, now they have to pay for litigation. What can we do to alleviate this suffering on these farmers?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I'm very grateful for the collegial back and forth on this, because clearly this is a very important question. It's a very important issue. It's one that I fully realize you and your family have been leaders on for a really long time. I am not aware of any specifics, but what I would really appreciate is if I could get those specifics, and then we could have an actual conversation so I can look at the examples of what you're talking about. We have worked really hard to have a USDA that supports everyone, no matter skin color, background, et cetera. And if we're not doing that, then I need to know.
Well, I certainly thank you for your candor and your honesty and your frankness, and even acknowledging that you don't know the history of all these issues, but you're willing to work with me. And for that, I'm appreciative. I will take you up on that.
It'd be great.
I've had some success under your administration in reversing some of these contracts, and I would like to have the opportunity to present others. So
100%.
I thank you for the ones that we have done, and I would like to see those farmers, in the light of all these other complicating issues, be able to plant and get back to work. Thank you very much,
I'll make a note of it.
Madam
Thank you.
Secretary. I yield back, Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Thank the gentleman. I recognize the gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Finstead, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here today. Appreciate your service and your leadership. I also want to thank your team for being so responsive as I've had different constituent outreach with the agency. You know, I'm reflecting as I'm hearing some of the questions and listening to your testimony, and I am a fourth-generation farmer from southern Minnesota. Mm-hmm. My wife and I, we like to joke, we grow corn, soybeans, and kids. And there was a time where we have 7 kids, and we had 7 kids under the age of 11 in our house.
Incredible.
And I think about the world that you're living in right now, and not to make light of it, but I remember many times my wife and I coming home, and the house is an absolute mess. And no one is there to help us clean it. But my wife and I, obviously have to take charge and clean up that mess. And I think about the agency and the ag economy that you inherited in your leadership role. And there was a mess. Mm-hmm. There was a mess. We're talking ag trade deficits that we haven't seen since the Jimmy Carter era.
That's right.
No new ag trade deals. nutrition programs growing at rates that are completely unsustainable, as well as being littered with fraud. And I'm from Minnesota, and I can speak to the fraud issue. Record high inflation, record high input costs. The farmers that I represent, I hear this quite often, we're land rich, cash poor. And the cash over the last 5 years has left the farm gate. And now we are sitting at this perfect storm where we have to figure out how the heck do we get out of it. And so I really want to talk about the market side, because the farmers that I represent, and I just had a roundtable last week with farmers, and I heard it loud and clear. They do not want a government check. They want a market that produces a price that allows them the freedom to farm and run their small business the way they have for generations. And so you've talked a little bit about the 19 new trade deals, closing that ag trade deficit. Could you talk a little bit more about the hope on the horizon in regards to that market side of farming, and then maybe any advice for how we can help?
Well, I think that's 100% right. And as we have begun to reopen the world to American agriculture, again, the $45 billion agriculture trade deficit we inherited after leaving with an $8 billion agriculture surplus in early 2021, a more than $50 billion swing in just 4 years, and saw markets close around the world, and saw Brazil and other countries step in and take over what was once an American-owned market. The new 19 trade deals and frameworks that have been struck, that is a remarkable number in just 1 year. And to see that, I mean, people thought it would take at least 4 years to cut even a little bit into that $50 billion deficit. We've now cut it by 42% in just 1 year, according to the numbers, and are expecting to drop down into the low 20% after this year's numbers come in, and then hopefully get back to a surplus. What that means, the billions of dollars in market access that we lost between 21 and 24 are real. And so gaining those back, we're expecting record exports of corn this year, dairy this year, tree nuts this year, ethanol this year, fresh fruits and veggies are up. All of these are up, and that is, to your point, the farmers do not want to farm for a government check, but we've got to get them the markets to be able to sell these goods and try to begin to bring the cost of inputs down that skyrocketed under the last administration.
So as I mentioned, I'm a fourth-generation farmer. My grandfather sold his soybeans in 1972 for $12.80 a bushel. Wow. And here I am as the fourth generation, hoping and praying for 1972 prices for our soybeans.
Well, today we're at $10.40, so we have a little ways to go, but you know that is, the good news is we're up a little bit versus where we were over the last number of years. So I do believe the markets are going to open in significant ways. You know this, China has already agreed and is buying significant amount of soybeans, more than they even have said that they promised to do. And then in addition to that, on just that one deal, another $17 billion in agricultural purchases from China for America. But I have to say, from a national security perspective, we have to diversify our markets, and that's why the president is working so hard around the world, so we're not reliant just on China to buy these products.
I appreciate those comments. I mean, I think it's worthy of noting that agriculture and feeding and fueling our neighbors and the world is the most honorable, noble profession that this country has ever seen. And when you think of our national security and our ability to, again, live a high-quality life in this country, it really comes down to nutrition and our great American farmers. So thank you for supporting our American farmers.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize the gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. McDonald-Rivet, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and Secretary Rollins for being here. Yeah, over here.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. My 54-year-old eyes are not great, so thank you.
I've got the 55-year-old eyes, so I completely understand.
Yes.
I've got 2 questions for you, so I'm going to be quick, but I really would love to be a bit forward-thinking right now. So I represent Mid-Michigan, and the farmers in the middle of Michigan are really, really hurting. In my district, we grow sugar beets, dry beans, corn, soybeans, pickles, and a lot more. Michigan's one of the most agriculturally diverse states in the country, and my district is actually right in the middle, in the heart of that. So our farmers, many of them generational farmers, are working really hard. They're doing everything right. Like my colleague just pointed out, they are really have been struggling for years. So in the midst of the new tariff policies that have cut off some of the markets for these, that the families have relied on for generations, the out-of-control input costs, and these diesel prices in particular are really, in the right now, incredibly hard for my farmers. So the bridge payments were a good start, but for a lot of our families, especially our sugar beet farmers and our specialty crop growers, it didn't come close, not even close. In fact, Michigan sugar beet farmers lost $100 million last season. When we look at over the last 3 years, an accumulative $50 billion debt loss in the ag economy, not debt, loss, excuse me, we actually need a plan for the right now. I understand what you're saying about growing markets and thinking about how to bring many of these things onshore, many of the input costs onshore, but what about now? Because I have talked to farmers all the time that are waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning worried that they, after the 4th generation, are about to lose their farm because one more year like that, and they are going to close. So can you give me some idea of what you think about what sustained relief looks like and when farmers in my district can expect to actually be made whole?
Well, I appreciate the question and well framed, and I know you're probably going to like some of what I say, probably not some of what I say, but I think you were right. This is years in the making, as we've offshored so much of our manufacturing, fertilizer, seeds, et cetera. When we walked in the door a year ago, interest rates, I know we haven't talked about that in this committee yet, we're up 73% for our farmers, 73%, fuel up about 28 to 30%, labor, for those that use the H2A program, was up about 46%. You've got a lot of H2A users in Michigan, actually, seeds, et cetera. And so this is again, years in the making, and the importance of bringing those inputs
with respect,
down
Madam,
are prioritized.
Madam Secretary, I'm going to reclaim my time because I have another question.
Sure.
I'm less interested right now because there's been a lot of discussion already in committee about how we got to where we are. Some of that we agree on, some of that we don't. But going forward, we're headed into a growing season where farmers in my district are really concerned that they are going to have another season like last year, and if they do without any substantial help, they are going to lose their farms. How are you thinking about that?
Well, fuel will be coming back down again. Labor is down 46%, the inputs we're talking about now. Fertilizer was down about 10% until the Middle East issue in the last few months. It will be coming back down. I appreciate your point. We can talk long term, but we need to talk short term. We expect a massive, the highest exports on record now. So I'm not talking about in a year, I'm not talking about in 5 years. This year, we're going to break records on our exports, including some of your specialty crops, but also your regular crops in Michigan as well. And then, of course, the constant conversation between your leadership and between us is,
I'm going
do
to
we need
claim my
more-
time back because I
do
only
we
have
need
1 minute
more
left and I want to get
assistance?
to my second question. But the
I think it's a
difficulty
fair
that I
question.
have, I cannot go back to my district with a cross your fingers answer to this question when it comes to fertilizer costs, when it comes to the cost of fuel and what is happening. There is no plan there right now.
Oh,
It's
no,
just
there is
cross
a
your fingers.
massive plan. I've laid it out about 6 times
Not your
today.
plan, I'm talking about the war. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the ASCF greenhouse exclusion, the program provides relief to specialty crop producers that are hurt by tariffs and rising input costs. Michigan's greenhouse growers need that help, but they are explicitly excluded from the program for no clear reason. It is cold in Michigan. We need our greenhouse farmers. My state has a significant greenhouse industry growing vegetables, flowers, herbs, and nursery crops, facing the exact same pressure as everyone else. Why were they left out, and will you commit to expanding the eligibility to include controlled environment growers?
Yes, let's follow up on that tomorrow. I will. We'll look into that.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson. I appreciate you holding this hearing, and thank you, Secretary Rollins, for being with us today. I know you've heard other members talk about their agricultural heritage. I am an 8th-generation farmer, farming the same land since 1790. I've got 2 little boys, Guy and Sam, who I hope will be the 9th generation. Mm-hmm. We're trying to foster that in them. And like you, I think it's safe to say, I think you'd say this, or nod when I say this, I wouldn't be here had it not been for my participation in the Future Farmers of America. And what a great program, and I know you're
Agreed.
deeply supportive as
Yeah.
well. I am struck by some of the comments from the other side of the aisle today, and I want to just stand up and say this. You know, I am 61. I'm sad to admit that, but it's true. But for most of my life, we have had an agricultural trade surplus in this country. And we are now in a crisis in farm country, and I think there's no denying that in part that has happened because the prior administration set a fire. And that fire did a lot of things. Number one, it set off a round of inflation unprecedented since my youth and as a member of the FFA in the Jimmy Carter inflation of the 1970s and 1980s. But they also failed to negotiate a single agricultural trade deal. You've talked about the 19 new trade deals in just 1 year. Folks, when you set a fire and you let it rage for 4 years, the damage that we see in farm country today, the damage that we see with affordability today in America, these are the things that you get. And so how dare they? How dare they, having been the arsonist setting this fire, now have the temerity to criticize the firemen that are on the scene containing it? So congratulations to you and President Trump, and I commend you for the work you've done, the tremendous work you've done in the short span that you've been in office of containing the fire and working hard to put it out and get us back on track as a country. So I thank you for all of the things that you all have been working on. As we all know, foreign markets are important. But they can also be unpredictable. And I know you've already spoken about this. This is why I'm an avid supporter of E15 and the biofuels in our country, because we need to find ways to consume more of the commodities that we produce right here at home to supply this country. Can you talk about other ways in which we can become more self-sufficient and ways in which we can add value to and use the commodities that we produce so efficiently and effectively here in our country?
Well, thank you, Congressman. I appreciate the kudos. It has been a Herculean effort over the last year to get all those new trade deals and frameworks done and to open the markets up. And I honestly, I would like to take a little credit, but it's really the president and his trade team, Jamison Greer and Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent, that have put agriculture at the top of their list as they're going out around the world with the president. So they deserve so much credit. But secondly, to your point, in terms of the importance of America first and making sure we're producing our own and consuming, excuse me, I was surprised, more than surprised, to see when I walked in the door that what used to be American-driven, whether it's fertilizer, seed, processing, you know, 4 packers basically process 85% of our beef in this country. There are so many areas that we have been asleep at the wheel, the country has, for decades, and has allowed the offshoring of so much of what we need to basically feed and fuel and clothe ourselves. And we're at the point, this is an existential issue to preserving our country for the next 250 years. If we need to rely on China for our food and our fertilizer and all of the things that come with that, we will lose what we understand to be liberty and freedom in this country. That's how important this is. So whether it's E15, whether it's onshoring fertilizer, whether it's breaking up and making sure we have smaller processors around the country so all of our cattle don't have to haul to the big 4, there are any number of issues. Getting cotton back into and onto American clothes and sheets, etc. It is a massive list of problems that we're working to solve, but I think we're making tremendous progress. None of this will happen overnight, but just seeing the markets that have gone up, seeing the tens of billions of dollars we're now moving out in just 1 year of our agricultural products, that's only going to get better and becomes more important to our country.
Well, thank you, Secretary Rollins. We well remember it took a decade to get the Carter inflation under control, fully extinguished, and it will sadly take a long time to get us completely back on track. Thank you for the work you and the President are doing.
Thank you, Congressman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Now recognize the gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Figures, for 5
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here. Good to see you again. I don't typically get involved in the back and forth, but I've been in Congress now about 18 months, And the one word that I hear more than perhaps anything else from my colleagues is or two words, is Joe Biden or Biden administration. And as it relates to our farmers, look, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't care what party the president is. I don't care where he's from. I don't care what his policies are. I don't care what his goals are. I don't care what his or her positions are on many things. All I care about is the decisions that you are making. Do they help District 2 in the state of Alabama? I don't care anything else. Is it good for my district? Is it good for my state? And when I continue to hear people talk about the Biden administration, and what they did, to the extent that there was a fire, this administration did not come in treating it with water. They came in spraying gasoline. And this administration did not ramp up the tariff war. This administration did ramp up the tariff war, did start the tariff war. The Biden administration didn't do that. The Biden administration didn't start a conflict in Iran that has fuel prices at record levels that we're seeing for some time. This administration did that. The Biden administration is not the one who has driven foreign exports away from farmers in the state of Alabama. This administration did that. The Biden administration did not open up cattle import markets from Argentina. This administration did that. And so I don't care if it's a Democrat or a Republican who did that. If Joe Biden had done those things, I'd sit here and tell you the exact same thing. It is wrong. It's not right. We should not be doing it. And so I think we all have a collective responsibility when we talk about taking care of farmers, when we talk about taking care of rural communities and taking care of the agriculture industry as a whole. We all have a responsibility to be real with ourselves. We all have a responsibility to be loyal to the communities and the states that we represent without finger pointing at a particular president or administration. We, this body, the Agricultural Committee, we have the power to stand back, to use our constitutional authority to push back against decisions of an administration, whether a prior administration or a current administration, to make sure we are positioning our farmers to thrive and succeed. And I get reports in my district, as I'm sure many people across here, do. We got some of the most peanut farmers in the country, in my district, and in my state, soybean farmers, right? And when I talk to them and they say things to me like, hey, the tariff rates have made it more expensive for us to produce these products than we can sell them for, that is a problem. And that is a problem that collectively we should be working together to solve. And I know you're not responsible for tariffs. I know that, right? We all know that, right? So I'm not gonna, throw that responsibility on you. But what I do expect is that the Department of Agriculture, as well as members of this committee on both sides, acknowledge the real harm that has caused to rural America.
May I respond?
Well, hold on, I'm gonna ask a question.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, the tariffs have been harmful. The input costs have been harmful. And sure, I'm sure we can point to, legitimately, we can point to policies across multiple administrations, that lead to our current circumstances, but I don't think that it is fair to anybody, and I don't think it is fair to the farmers, first and foremost, to point that finger solely at one man or one previous administration and ignore the actions that the current administration is taking. And so my question is that, we've heard reports of foreign markets drying up for exports, for peanut farmers in the state of Alabama. We've even seen some reports that say peanuts were unable to be exported to international markets from the state of Alabama last year. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem. And we've seen similar reports that say that China, who buys most of this, I know we criticize China a lot, but they're an enormous consumer of American agricultural goods, that they are investing elsewhere, that they're helping stand up markets, soybean markets in Brazil, peanut markets in other places in the country. And I'm worried that those markets are not going to return to the state of Alabama. So my question is, what is the Department of Agriculture doing to ensure that those markets can be restored, are not permanently lost, and that we're doing as much as we can to support our farmers in that? And I know I've spoken through most of my time, but to the extent that you can, please respond. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, just 30 seconds. So I appreciate the framing and the passion, and I'm grateful for that. We love our farmers in Alabama for sure. But I will say it was what you're calling the tariff war That is what allowed us to strike 19 new trade deals and cut the $42 billion agricultural trade deficit, the markets that were lost in the 4 years. And I get it. You're like, please stop talking about Biden. But it was those 4 years that we lost $42 billion in agricultural markets. We went to a deficit. In 1 year, under those 19 new trade deals, we've cut that in half. So we're actually opening the markets all around the world, and exports are going to be up. We're expecting a record export year this year. The inputs are another conversation. We don't have time. I've been talking about them a lot. But for the actual trade part, we're actually, all of us are winning on that.
You bet, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Van Orden, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hate to say this to my dear colleague from Alabama, but the gas prices were only higher under the Biden administration. Sorry. Couldn't help it, man. Madam Secretary, I want to thank you for visiting, and we're going to welcome you back with the President. I think that's fantastic. I want to cover a few things, dairy, screw room, SNAP, and then if we can get to it, nukes real quick. So this question actually comes from the American Agro Women. It's the largest group of female farmers in the world. Kim is our rep in Wisconsin. She's fantastic. She was here yesterday. We had some cheese and beer together, as you do. And this is talking about the farm program. So I'll just read it. This is directly from them. Our dairy farmers are really concerned about the amount of proprietary operational data that they're being required to provide to milk processors and third parties. Through the checkoff process, they've been forced to provide their proprietary data to be aggregated and given to milk processors, both cooperatives and independent, some with that are foreign owned by Canada, and it's without the farmers realizing that they're giving up their proprietary data. So the problem here is that there's so much data that has been given by the farmers to these organizations. We don't know where the data's going. We don't know if they're selling the data, who has access to it, and we're very concerned about this. So are you guys looking at this to see if you can modify this program to
We are. Okay. This is a really important, most people don't even realize, for any of you from dairy states, your dairy farmers, especially your small guys, the ones we're really trying to help, have to basically, to be able to sell their milk, they have to provide this crazy amount of data, what they feed their cattle, where the manure is disposed of. And it's all in the name of climate and the climate challenge. And so you're basically requiring right now your dairy farmers to hand over this data. And if they don't sort of check the box, then they can't sell their milk. And this is a really big challenge, way under the radar, but we are working on it and working with some of your dairy farmers on it.
Thank you, ma'am. Another dairy issue. We talked about trade. So whole milk for healthy kids, during the Obama administration, sorry, did he take off? He's gone. They got rid of whole milk, 1%, 2% milk, flavored milks, and a bunch of dairy products within our schools. So with, G.T. Thompson, we've been working on this forever. He's been working on it for a really long time. When President Trump signed the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act into law, that reopened all the domestic markets in our public schools for our children. So one, from the nutritional aspect, is fantastic, but you talk about trying to get new trade deals going. That is wonderful, so I want to thank you for your help on that. And I got to admit, I've been misquoting you guys. I did it twice, media today. I said you've only done 15 trade deals in 15 months. It's 19. Sorry about that. I'll correct that
We'll forgive
in the
you.
future.
Yes.
That's over one a month.
It's incredible.
I don't think people understand that.
It's unprecedented and historical, and there's more coming. That's what's exciting.
Okay, let's get on India. We got to talk to you about those cats.
Yes.
New World screwworm. People don't understand that the New World screwworm does not differentiate between a beefer or a dairy cow or a swine or poultry or your cat or even you. And I appreciate it. We've been working on this for over a year now, so I know some of my colleagues aren't as in tune to that with Tracy Mann, his leadership of the subcommittee for poultry, dairy, and livestock. They'd say livestock first, but so I understand you've got a 20-kilometer exclusion zone around this?
Correct. So the case that was confirmed yesterday, and I leave here in about an hour and go jump back on with about 1,000 people from around the country. But the case that was confirmed yesterday, the protocol, it's all on screwworm.gov. You can't forget that, screwworm.gov. But the protocol is the moment we have a confirmation, that we have a 20-kilometer, basically, quarantine, and there can be no movement of animals. What people don't realize, first of all, the screwworm is a fly. The president was confused about this. He's like, why do we call it a screwworm if it's a fly, as I was trying to explain it to it. But the flies don't move long distances. The way the screwworm is basically spread is when you move the livestock long distances. So that's what happened in Mexico with the cartels. That's why we're in this position we're in. But that's what's so important, why we've got to quarantine and stop movement.
Thank you, ma'am. And for people that are not fan of RFID tags, let's got to understand the way that we're going to track these animals is through that. And then let's just go to SNAP real quick. So I was raised in abject rural poverty by a single mother, and we had food stamps when it was a stamp that went on a card and had government cheese and subsidized lunches and all that stuff. Then every single dollar that we allocate for a hungry child needs to go to a hungry child.
That's right.
I mean, the SNAP program is not an international food aid program. It's for needy Americans, and I benefited from this. So I want to commend you for making sure that we remove the billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of fraud so that the hungry child gets fed. So thank you very much, ma'am. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, sir. We'll
Gentleman's
see you
time
tomorrow.
has expired. Now recognize Mr. Riley from New York for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary. It's good to see you again. Last time we saw you were here with your kids. I take it they learned their lesson. And
Yes. You'll notice they only sat for about 30 minutes. Yes,
we talked about that. They skipped out on this one. I have two things I want to talk to you about. One of them we just texted about, you and I, yesterday. I grew up a few blocks from a cider mill in Endicott. Not a cider mill, the cider mill. And one of the things you do as a kid is you go there for your field trips and you watch them press the apples and make the cider. So it's not just great locally sourced cider. It's one of those shared experiences that we all had in the community going there, and that's the sort of thing that helps build community. In fact, the first time I brought my wife home to meet my parents, literally the very first thing we did was took her to the cider mill, like make or break moment for me. And we'll be celebrating our 10-year anniversary, 10-year anniversary coming up this fall.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So when our apple growers are facing tough times, we really, really want to be there for them. And right now, things are really tough, especially in the Hudson Valley because of the April frost. Saunderskill Farms in Accord is an 11th and 12th generation family farm dating back to 1680, the oldest farm in New York State. It stood the test of time, but today it could lose half of its apple crop because of the frost. You and I traded a couple text messages yesterday. I just want to ask you, can we work together to make sure that New York State's disaster designation gets finalized as quickly as possible so that farms like Saunderskill can get the support they deserve?
100% yes. And I would love to go to an 11th generation apple farm. That is, I've been talking to a lot of the apple guys. I'll make sure and include your guys too.
Wonderful.
They are struggling. We need to eat more apples in this country. So I'm on
Good.
the apple thing, but yes, for
Let's
sure.
do it. Let's get this disaster declaration approved so they can get the support they need, and then maybe you and I can go up and give the good news together.
Yeah.
Great, and let me know anything I can do to be helpful in getting that disaster declaration done. I want to tell you about Copake. This is a beautiful rural town in Columbia County, really tight-knit community of a few thousand people. They actually have this great car show that I like to take the kids to at Wabika Family Campground every summer. But today, Copake is being targeted by a $1 billion out-of-state corporate developer called Hecate Energy that wants to cover our land with their solar panels. And it's not just any solar panels. These are solar panels made by a Chinese company with ties to slave labor. And look, these developers, first of all, they should be using American supply chains, not Chinese supply chains. And if they're building anywhere, build on parking lots and brownfields or the rooftops of cities, not in beautiful farmland in upstate New York. But they're targeting places like Copake because it's a small town and they think they can steamroll us to make a buck for themselves. So Copake is small, but they fight, and the entire community, I'm telling you, residents, farmers, small business owners, Democrats, Republicans, independents, everyone got together to fight back against this thing, passed 17 zoning laws to stop this project from coming in. But there's this group, it's called ORIS, it's a bunch of unelected bureaucrats in Albany, and they are overriding the residents of Copake and letting Hecate plow ahead. So they're literally overruling our neighbors and handing this beautiful upstate New York farmland to corporate developers using Chinese supply chains. And if they succeed, this is going to be such a tragedy. Not just for towns like Copake that deserve better. 2024, 2025 alone, we lost 500 farms and 100,000 acres of farmland in upstate New York.
Yeah.
And if we don't change course, we're going to lose it all. So one of the reasons I supported the Farm Bill is because it included my legislation to stop China from buying American farmland. This is basically the same thing we're dealing with here. So I saw your tweet last week raising the alarm about this, including in upstate New York. As you know, I'm always looking for ways to find common ground and shared values, and I think this might be one of them. So my question, to the extent with time remaining, is what can you and I do together at the federal level to protect our farmland and save towns like Copake?
I'm not sure that there's a more righteous battle than to battle to save this farmland. And I'm sure you know, but Cornell partnered with the state of New York to reclassify USDA prime farmland to not prime farmland. Took 80% of our classification, said, oh, actually, it's only 11%, which is allowing this development to happen, which is absolutely not okay. I would love to work with you.
Yeah, and if there are things, I know my time's expired, if there are things we can do federally to preempt some of this, and it's not just preempting it federally, I look at it as like we have to take action federally to return control to local people. Like the power should be with the people in Copake, not a bunch of unelected bureaucrats. And if you and I need to work together federally to return that power to them, let's do that.
I would welcome that. We're already on it, so let's loop you into that work.
Thanks, Secretary.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Gentleman's time has expired. I now recognize Mr. Newhouse from Washington State.
Thank you, Chairman Thompson.
See you.
Secretary Rollins, welcome to the Ag Committee. It's a pleasure to have you here. Appreciate you coming back. And let me just say we appreciate the work you're doing every single day on behalf of our farmers and ranchers, particularly in the state of Washington, as you mentioned in your written testimony. You know, I'm a third-generation farmer myself. My son's a fourth generation. We know firsthand the big challenges that agriculture faces. And I know everybody's looking to you for answers. I just want to tell you I appreciate your aggressive approach to solving some of the biggest challenges I've ever seen in the agricultural industry.
Thank you.
Let me get into the weeds just a little bit, not weeds specifically, but a gentleman from New York raised the issue of apples. The Supplemental Disaster Program, which has been a tremendous help. You've extended the application deadline for the 23-24 program. I've been hearing from several of my constituents about some of the issues around the quality loss portion of this program, particularly for apples and pears, the iconic Washington apple, I might say. The current reporting period is, I think, 30 days. And while that works for most producers to report a quality loss, it doesn't align with commercial practices for producing apples and pears. They're stored soon after harvest, and as you know, these fruits are available literally year-round. Some are in storage for weeks before they are being graded and sold. So my question has to do with the flexibility around that program. Could we provide some flexibility there around that deadline so that these two fruits are not automatically disqualified?
Yeah, if you'll follow up with me directly, and then we'll get the right team on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Like I said, I've been hearing from several people about that issue. And staying on the assistance topic for just a sec, I want to thank you for the recent announcement regarding the assistance for specialty crops. And while, thank you, very much appreciate that. There's been a lot of concern expressed that there's going to be additional needs. So I'm just looking to you for commitment to working with me, with Congress, and the stakeholders in specialty crops, so that we can assess what, if any, additional assistance could be brought forth, particularly for producers whose losses or those cost pressures maybe aren't reflected with the current program as it was rolled out. I'm particularly thinking about, specialty crops are a unique animal.
That's right.
And acreage, basing some of the calculations on acreage doesn't always work. We have to look back at production records more so. So just looking for that kind of opening that door and commitment from you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep, good, good. And then I just wanted to broach the subject of foreign investment in agriculture lands in the United States. My legislation, actually, and this has been one of my issues for several years, so I'm glad to see it coming to fruition. And with you in the Secretary's chair, we're going to see this finally happen. But we will put you on that panel permanently.
Yes.
And appreciate very much your understanding that this truly is a matter of national security to prevent particularly the Communist Chinese Party from owning more land in the United States. So any thoughts about that you haven't already expressed would be good.
Yeah, I appreciate your leadership on that so much. And I do think we have made progress in the last 14 months of waking up America at what has happened over decades, whether it's the purchase of farmland from foreign adversaries, especially around military bases, but also the purchase of some of our supply chains. The fact that foreign adversaries own about a fifth of our pork, that Brazil owns about half of our packing and processing, that China owns basically our chemical seeds, that several other countries own our fertilizer. How did this happen? Where were we? Not we in this room, but the proverbial we. What were we doing? And my goodness, what would have happened if we didn't have a leader who recognizes that and who's given us basically the runway to go try to fix it?
And let me just say, you mentioned the fertilizer production in the state of Washington.
Yes.
I look forward to working with you and making that a reality. Atlas Agro has some tremendous potential there, and will help do exactly what you're talking about, bring some of this stuff back to the United States so we're not dependent on foreign sources.
We have to, or we'll lose our country.
Absolutely.
That's how important it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Secretary Rollins.
Thank you.
I represent the Central Coast of California, where agriculture is our #1 industry. Like many farmers across the country, growers in my district are currently under tremendous pressure. They are simultaneously grappling with labor shortages, a shuttered export market, rising costs for fertilizer, seed, chemicals, and fuel, as well as increasing competition from abroad, all of which are making it harder to stay profitable and keep their operations running. You may disagree with my next point, but many of these problems have been caused and/or exacerbated by this Trump administration. Whether the misguided tariffs or the war with Iran, it is clear these actions are harming our farmers throughout the country. I hear it every day from my farmers. Specialty crop producers have been hit especially hard, often without access to the same level of federal support and safety net programs available to other commodity sectors. While I was pleased to hear that funding available for assistance for specialty crop farmers program was increased to $1.6 billion, it is widely acknowledged by the industry that this funding represents only a fraction of the total economic losses suffered by specialty crop growers. Do you agree that additional assistance is necessary? And does USDA have plans for further assistance for specialty crop farmers in the future?
This is really a congressional question. We stand by and are ready to assist if that determination is made. I was out in California last week visiting with Allied Potato and meeting with some specialty crop growers. There is no doubt that there are some headwinds, and we need to do everything we can to work on those, whether opening markets, decreasing input prices, or additional assistance.
Are there other actions USDA will be taking to address some of these impacts on farm country?
Well, every day we're taking action. You know, the good news from the Working Families Tax Cut is there were a lot of provisions in that bill whether it was reference prices, death tax exemption, better crop protection. Of course, the new farm bill that you all worked so hard on and got moved through also will make additional steps. So we're executing on that every single day. The export market for some of our specialty crops like tree nuts is expected to be way up this year. So we're going to be shipping a lot more around the world. So that's good. And then the Make America Healthy Again movement. I'm not sure that anyone's going to benefit more from that than our specialty crop growers who are growing the healthy veggies, berries, et cetera.
Let's hope so. Earlier this spring, Costco began selling grapevines to their retail club members in Northern California. We have since learned that several of these grapevine plants have become infested with the glassy-winged sharpshooter insect and have now quickly spread across the state. As you may know, this insect led to the Pierce disease outbreak, which caused significant damage to the wine industry. There is a need for immediate infusion of funding to mitigate damage for this insect before it becomes a major problem and causes severe financial losses to our country's leading wine-producing state. Can you share what actions USDA is currently taking to respond to these concerns, and are there emergency funding opportunities currently being considered that could help address these challenges?
Yes, our APHIS team is on it. We just talked about it yesterday, even though we're dealing with screwworm, which is taking a lot more media than certainly the pest you announced. But yes, we talked about it yesterday. We are on it. Our APHIS team is there on site, and we'll do whatever we need to do to protect those vineyards and those vines.
Thank you. Secretary Rollins, horticulture and floriculture are vital sectors in my district as well. Yet they were excluded from the Assistance for Specialty Crop Farmers program, despite facing many of the same input costs, increases, or other agriculture producers. Would you agree that they deserve assistance as well?
I would love to see more information on that. We had to draw the line somewhere. We drew the line at what people eat. That was over 100 specialty crops were included in the last round. But again, from a congressional perspective, if Congress decides that additional assistance is needed for horticulture, floriculture, I will of course support that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, sir.
I thank the
We'll
gentleman.
follow up on the pest. Yeah, thank you.
Now I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Mannion, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Rollins, for being here today, answering our questions and providing so many details. And thank you for coming to upstate New York to highlight our region's dairy industry. New York's 22nd Congressional District is home to a great dairy industry that is immensely important to our state's agriculture. I've heard directly from my dairy producers about the issues, and I'm sure you've heard across the country as well, issues related to labor shortages, high input costs, and very real profitability concerns that we've talked about here today, and I appreciate the details you provided in your answers. So,
thank you.
One of the reasons I was excited to be a member of this committee is the spirit of bipartisanship that exists here and has operated to support our nation's farmers through unexpected crises both here and around the world. I've been pleased to work in that same bipartisan spirit to expand market opportunities for our dairy farmers, including through the Whole Milk for Healthy Kids Act. That was a real bright spot for our producers, and I appreciate your work in helping getting that legislation quickly implemented and guidance out to our schools.
Thank you.
I want to focus on two issues today that are at the front of my mind and certainly at the front of the minds of my constituents. I'll run through both and welcome your thoughts at the end.
Sounds good.
First, Governor Hochul recently submitted a request for disaster designation. I believe my colleague from New York mentioned that as well, for a large portion of my district and other parts of the state that were impacted by the April frost, which has decimated many fruit operations, including our apple and grape producers. New York is the nation's #2 apple producer, and our grape growers support thousands of jobs on farms, in tasting rooms, and in packaging facilities. So now they're looking at more than $30 million in estimated losses. Unfortunately, this comes on the heels of an already difficult stretch for our growers who face back-to-back years of weather-related losses. And for many of these operations, another significant crop loss could be an event that forces them to close. So I would appreciate at the end if you could provide an update on where USDA is on processing the governor's request and any information you can share so that I can communicate that directly back to our producers. The second issue is on rural development. Like some of my colleagues, I was concerned to see the deep cuts to rural development programs included in the President's budget. I'm worried that these cuts, along with the proposed changes to the USDA home loan programs, will restrict access to rural home ownership at the exact moment when families in places like Central New York and the Mohawk Valley are already facing higher housing costs, higher interest rates, and fewer affordable homes. So I'm asking if you can commit to ensuring that families in rural communities who rely on Section 502 direct loans as their primary pathway to home ownership will not see processing delays or reduced access as a result of the administrative changes. Thank you, Secretary.
No, thank you so much. So first on the disaster declaration, we received Governor Hochul's letter on May 19th. We are moving. In fact, I keep this with me. I understand how important this is. New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, West Virginia, Virginia, and Maryland are the ones we're looking at right now to, with the utmost speed possible, to get those declarations out. So you have my personal commitment. I'm checking every single day. Obviously, a lot of data has to be gathered, but we've got to do that at warp speed. So if you're hearing or seeing something different, would you just flag that for me directly, and I'll give you my number. The second thing on the Rural Development Housing Program, first of all, there's no less amount of money going into the program, but there is a rule change that allows that money to be spread more evenly across the country. And so, your concern is real for those from New York and California. That is arguably less money for your constituents to put into housing. And so I hear that. I take it to heart. I understand it. But the goal of the program, again, is to get as much money as we can to help as many rural homes as we can get built. But I would welcome a continuing dialogue on that, and especially specifics that you may have that show how this is hurting your constituents as we're continually updating and looking at those rules.
Great. Thank you so much, Madam Secretary. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Now recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mesmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary. Appreciate your work to strengthen coordination between the USDA and the Department of War by signing an MOU with Secretary Hegseth in February. That same month, I introduced the DoD and USDA Interagency Research Act, a bill that would foster collaboration between the DoD's Office of Research and Engineering and USDA's AGARDA program. It would strengthen our agricultural security, and it will accelerate innovation for American farmers and ranchers. Since signing the MOU, how has the USDA worked with the Department of War, specifically DARPA, and the USDA's Office of the Chief Scientist to advance agricultural security and innovation?
I'm so happy you asked this question. I never before has the Secretary of War, previously Secretary of Defense, actually signed an MOU with the Secretary of Agriculture. We have talked, under any administration, we have talked at length today about the national security implications of agriculture and how for so many years America, I believe, has been asleep. And while we've been talking about a stronger military and reshoring manufacturing, well, what about reshoring our fertilizer? What about reshoring our seeds? What about ensuring that foreign adversaries can't buy farmland? And so I called Pete about this, our Secretary of War, back last year, and I said, I really want to elevate, even in your own mind, how important agriculture, farm security, food security is national security. And he said, Brooke, I'm all in. And so that's what that MOU represented. We have been working back and forth. The screwworm is a really good example of this, real world example, that the screwworm is potentially a compromise to our food supply system, that we consume 13 million metric tons of beef every year in America. 11 million metric tons of that we raise ourselves. We import between 2 and 3 million metric tons. Well, if we have a big screwworm infestation, which we will not, we're on top of it, but that's the challenge. If we're not ready for it, then that could very much compromise our beef cattle industry in inuring to us relying on other countries for our protein, our beef. Called Secretary Hegseth. called General Graham, head of the Army Corps of Engineers, obviously part of the Secretary of the War Department, and they immediately prioritized our screwworm facility in South Texas, a $750 million investment to make sure this doesn't happen again once it's up and running. So that is an example. There are dozens and dozens of examples, but that is an example of how the Department of War is prioritizing agriculture.
Okay, thank you. Your team has already been instrumental in the development of my bill, and I'd like to see if you could commit to further relationship with me as we move closer to the end zone.
Yes, we would so welcome that.
Thank you. Also, Indiana is the fourth largest turkey producer in the nation. In 2024, the Hoosier farmers raised 20 million birds. Through the success of the USMCA, Mexico has become the #1 destination for American turkey products and a major export market for Indiana producers. Yeah. Unfortunately, we lack the same kind of access to the Canadian market. While exports of turkey to Canada have been stagnant for the last decade, imports from Canada have increased. Madam Secretary, can you commit to working with the U.S. Trade Representative to expand access to the Canadian market for U.S. turkey producers through the upcoming USMCA review?
Yes, 100%. And Jameson and I talk almost every day, so there will be a lot of opportunity to make sure that's prioritized. So thank you. If you'll just stay in touch with me as we move forward.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah. Before I conclude, I want to reiterate my strong support for USDA's reorganization plan, and thank you for having Deputy Secretary Vaden in Indiana today. As a leader in SNAP efficiency and a trailblazer in ag research, Indiana is well prepared to welcome the USDA staff looking to set down roots in the Hoosier State. As Indiana continues to ready space, can you share more details on regarding the SNAP functions and what USDA mission areas we can expect to relocate to Indiana?
We are, yes, we will follow up with you on that. We're obviously finalizing all of the details. Indiana was such, for me, as we were deciding where to move a lot of the different silos, different organizations within USDA, the importance of Indiana from being in the middle of the country, having so many research hubs within just a couple of hours, obviously including Purdue, one of your shining stars. There's just so much opportunity there from the research perspective. But to your point on FNS, now FNA, the food and nutrition, it's going to be really, really good, whether it's Indiana, Dallas, other parts around the country, to have those in the middle of the country that are closer to where they're serving. And of course, we have offices in Colorado and Utah coming as well. And we put a lot in Iowa and some of the other states too. So we're still finalizing that, but moving very quickly.
Thank you. My office is willing to do anything we can to help in that transition, and I yield back.
Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. We've had some extenuating circumstances after consulting with the ranking member. We're going to recognize Mr. Harris from North Carolina next. I know that's out of line, out of order, but then we'll go with two of our Democrat colleagues back to back next. So, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for your presence here, and appreciate the incredible work that you are doing. You know, it's no secret that under the previous administration, the Department of Agriculture willfully engaged in racial discrimination when administering several of the programs in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in many cases, these discriminatory policies provided and enhanced benefits. There was some preferential treatment. There was priority consideration within the USDA programs to individuals classified as socially disadvantaged. And that was based on race, ethnicity, and gender. And recognizing the problem with this, it's my understanding that was plaguing the federal government, President Trump, shortly after coming to office, signed the executive order ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. I just wanted to ask you real quickly if you could share some specific examples of actions that the department has been able to take to comply with President Trump's executive order and to remove these preferences to ensure that our farmers and ranchers are all being treated equally under the law.
On day one, we canceled 900 DEI trainings, which is kind of stunning that the U.S. Department of Agriculture was spending so much time and resources and taxpayer dollars DEI training. The number of grants that we canceled that were focused on things like this is the name of the grant, Queer and BIPOC Farmers and Food Justice in San Francisco. This was an actual USDA grant looking at racial injustice in the pest control business. That was another grant. Looking at the menstrual cycles in transgender Americans. I mean, it is stunning. And I have to believe that maybe not every American who hears that, but I've got to believe most Americans, no matter where they vote or what side of the aisle they vote on, would agree that that is not a good use of taxpayer dollars coming through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Right. And so aligning the USDA, recalibrating the USDA, and putting the farmer and the rancher as our #1 customer. We do a lot of things every day, all day, every day, but when Abraham Lincoln founded this department in 1862, never in a million years would he ever have been okay with some of the priorities that the last administration had put in place. So that's what we worked hard to change.
Well, and I agree 100%. And I will say that that's why I was pleased to see in February of this year, the Solicitor General John Sauer sent a letter to Speaker Johnson stating that the Department of Justice had identified and concluded that several of these statutory provisions of federal law governing these programs that establish race and gender-based preferences for individuals designated as socially disadvantaged, according to John Sauer, they were unconstitutional. And so while the DOJ's determination is important to me, hypothetically speaking, if Congress doesn't remove these provisions from federal law, could a future administration reinstate these race and gender-based preferences and reverse the reforms that your department has now started to implement?
That is the challenge. That is the imperative that Congress has to act. And it isn't just on DEI. That's important, and it isn't just on some of the other silly stuff that we inherited. But even out in the countryside, the farmers are so thankful. Thank you for changing the adverse effective wage rate for H-2A, so it's now I can afford my H-2A employees. Thank you for putting, for putting real food back in the dietary guidelines and for our school lunches. Thank you for deconsolidating the packers and getting. Thank you for all that. But unless we get it codified and into law, these farmers are going to face whiplash again, and they're going to go back again. And so I just can't understate it. And y'all have been heroes on trying to get all of this into law so it stays.
Well, and Madam Secretary, that is exactly the concern, and that's why I introduced the Equal Treatment for Farmers Act, which would strike the very provisions in the U.S. Code that the DOJ has identified as unconstitutional and prohibits future administrations from discriminating based on race or gender. I think all of us agree discrimination is wrong. That's right. It always has been. It is antithetical to our American values, but the solution to discrimination is not more discrimination in the opposite direction, is providing equal treatment under the law. And I was very thankful to have 26 co-signers almost immediately when we dropped that bill, and it's something that's going to be important. So I want to say thank you to you and to your department and to this administration for the work they're doing. Thank you.
Sir. I'll look forward to partnering with you on that further. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. I believe the Secretary's got a hard stop at 2 o'clock, so we just ask people to, just ask your questions, but be succinct. And I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Venman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary, for coming back this year. So yesterday, I had a group of women farmers from across the Commonwealth of Virginia come visit me. And they were very stressed and frankly alarmed at the state of agriculture and production this year. One particular producer out of Orange County was talking about the effects of the weather and shocks to input costs. And I think you and I can agree that times are tough for America's farmers today. And so as we look at the cost of fertilizer, the cost of fuel, those input costs, and then the natural shocks of weather, there's a particular issue that I want to discuss with you. In my state, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, farmers have experienced significant damage to their crops due to below freezing temperatures. Losses were well above the 30% disaster trigger. as a result of these freezing temperatures, and some farmers are even anticipating 100% loss of their crop. And so I'm concerned that between this, the current drought that they're facing, the high fertilizer costs, the cost of diesel, even more Virginia farmers will be forced to shut their farms for good. And we've seen a pretty significant increase in farm bankruptcies over the course of the last year. They need USDA disaster assistance urgently. Governor Spanberger requested the USDA issue a disaster declaration for all counties in the Commonwealth. Can you commit today to issuing a secretarial disaster designation for the entire Commonwealth of Virginia?
Well, we obviously have to get the data to make sure, but her letter came in the 27th, I think just a couple of days ago. We've already reached back out to her office to begin that data collection, and my commitment is to move that as quickly as humanly possible so we can get some word to those farmers that there is help coming.
Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, sir.
I thank the gentleman. Now recognize the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. McLean Delaney, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for joining us again. It's great to see you, and
Good to see
thank
you
you
too.
for. I think you're now at 3.5 hours, so.
I may not be quite as sharp as I was 3.5 hours ago,
gosh.
so forgive me.
Oh, no, not at all. As you might remember, I represent Maryland's 6th Congressional District, which is Western and Mountain Maryland, and am the daughter of a potato farmer. As many have talked about, our farmers are really being squeezed, and I'm in constant contact with our 5 farm bureaus. We have over 12,000 farms that support over 83,000 jobs and generate billions every year in Maryland. And as you also heard, farm bankruptcies are up 47% this year over last by the tariffs, immigration-related workforce issues, and cuts at USDA. And I won't go into it because I can hear from many of my colleagues, including my colleagues from Alabama and other places, these tariffs and farm inputs have been really hard and destabilized markets. And I take note that you are trying to help with those 19 different trade agreements across the world, and that we do have to take back and a lot of those farm inputs from fertilizer and other places back into our country. However, there has been a lot of disruption, and some of it self-inflicted, and I am concerned. And so a couple of things. I want to first, like my colleague, Rep. Vintman, going into the frost, just want to lift up, last May, Mountain Maryland was hit by historic flooding that ravaged communities, and hundreds of kids were rescued from Westernport Elementary. I returned just last week with Governor Westmore from the reopening of its school. And even though Western Maryland did meet the thresholds for FEMA aid, and the Western Port fire truck crossed 3 miles over into West Virginia to put out fires, same community and same storm, the president and this administration did deny FEMA aid for Maryland, but granted it 3 miles away for West Virginia. And I firmly believe in the public interest, and that our government resources like FEMA, emergency funds, infrastructure, broadband, or healthcare dollars, water resources, and USDA resources like grants and infrastructure should be given irrespective of party, zip code, or circumstance. And I show up with my big mama bear arms for every single constituent and fight like hell for them, including for my farmers. And I mentioned this, Maryland recently also did request a secretarial disaster designation for our farmers. We lost 99% of our peach crop, 98% of our barley crop, and 36% of our grape loss. And so, considering Maryland has met the thresholds, and you just granted Pennsylvania a disaster declaration, like my colleagues, I just commit to offering the same relief for Maryland's farmers, irrespective of zip code or party or circumstance, and elaborate that we can, ensure that politics do not impact the economic viability or safety and health and well-being of our farmers or of all of our Americans.
Of course, 100%. And I'll follow up with you on
that would be excellent. Yeah. They are really suffering and really need it. I also do want to recognize some staff from BARC and AFGE who are here today. BARC stands for the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center in Maryland, and I do serve, my other committee is SST, Science, Space, and Technology. I'm a big believer in science and what it does for our U.S. competitiveness, our national security, and our health and well-being, and I think BARC helps with all of those. And for nearly 100 years, it has helped farmers fight pests and disease, and like the screwworm, I even have this ugly picture somewhere. Yes, there it is.
He's
Yuck,
looking
yuck.
at me, yes.
And you know, they help improve nutrition and host our bee lab. But you know, many of us believe that, you know, moving facilities and this relocation closer to the farmers, I understand why it might be, you might think it has to be done thoughtfully in a way which does not include losing decades of research and institutional knowledge and the experienced staff. And, you know, when USDA relocated ERS in 2019, nearly 85% of those staffers quit or retired, and we're hearing up to 75% might do so here in Maryland. And I know that you did open up this new livestock insects research lab in Texas, and it's exciting, but it takes a while to set up research. And particularly with our bee lab and others, you know, the research constant is important. I'm just asking, is there a way to keep current facilities here with experienced staff, but yet still experiment, no pun intended, with setting up other labs across the country? Because in the end, it's about, you know, keeping our research and results and impact for our farmers, and also protecting those who have given decades to USDA.
Obviously, this is a much longer conversation, and we have been analyzing it from every angle, but I, again, and I hope you know I'm sincere, I would welcome the opportunity to sit down and meet some of those men and women, and I have been completely, I know GT's gonna yell at me because I'm 10 seconds over, but I have been so inspired by the USDA career team, those who have given decades, from, you know, Annette, who runs the print shop, to the researchers. They are so inspiring, their public service. So I would again, yes, I would welcome the opportunity to sit down.
I would only say Teddy, who's here from USDA, said decision makers sometimes don't understand the research that's being impacted. And I know
Yes.
some of them are here.
Yes.
God bless you, thank you, and I yield back.
God bless you too, thank you.
Now I recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Taylor, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you very much, Secretary Rollins, for being here.
Very patient.
Thanks
You're on the front row.
They put the really important people down here.
Yeah, exactly.
What also comes with this seat is everybody's asked every question that you could have possibly thought of.
Exactly. At least I can see you. This is actually a benefit, yes.
That may not be a good thing. Again, thank you so much for your incredible hard work and your service to this point. It's been very impressive and appreciated. I do get some questions in my district occasionally about staffing at USDA offices. Are there steps being taken as the USDA, at the USDA to make sure that as we rightly pursue efficiency, that the safety of our food supply and its pace to market is protected by providing sufficient inspectors and other needed staff?
Yes, we obviously the reduction in force that was voluntary through the DRPs last year, the idea we needed to right size across the federal government. The president had been talking about that for some time. It is not an imperfect process, and so what we've been doing the last year is figuring out what that right balance is, and at the very top of my list obviously is research, which is very important, but also the FSA offices and where we provide the frontline services for our farmers. And so we've been in touch. I've been visiting FSA offices. I've had some of our best practices in my office here in Washington. How do we support those farmers? I know we're moving to one farmer, one file, moving to more technology, but those offices will never close. That's congressional statute. And so ensuring that we've got the resources on the ground continues, and we're shifting around and rehiring, et cetera, and understand the challenges.
Great, thank you for that. Also, we talked a little bit about the situation now with Iran driving the high prices, and not just on fuel, but on fertilizer and other things. Is there planning going on currently at the USDA to assist our farmers in the event that that situation drags on?
That is an ongoing conversation, honestly, even before the situation in Iran. How and what more do we need to do? This is listen, the farmers are the heartbeat of our country. Everyone is on this committee because they love the farmers, the agriculture, rural America. We're fighting for them, but it's so much bigger than that. It's a national security issue, and the more we lose our farms, whether it's to, development, data centers, et cetera. Understanding, progress, quote, is important, but we've got to be able to preserve these farms. And the trajectory has been the other direction for a really long time, but the opportunity to reverse back now, I think, is where we are in our country's history. I think the Making America Healthy Again movement, sourcing more locally grown foods, processing them locally. The USDA spends $400 million a day on nutrition. There's a whole market there that we can capture that will, again, reverse the trend for our farmers, I believe.
Right. Great. Well, thank you very much. And I did just want to say a quick thank you on behalf of rural America for ending the subsidies for the massive solar projects. We talked about that last year when you were here. I appreciate your commitment to following up on that. We did submit a bill that's in the Farm Bill to codify that, and hopefully that gets done soon, as well as your attention to the SNAP fraud that we've talked about a lot today. And we've also sponsored a bill to require a 5-year look-back reporting from each state in an annual report. Hopefully that gets some traction as well. Also want to mention that we work with the Ohio State USDA Office of Rural Development, and they've been a wonderful asset. Charles Tassel's the director, and he's been incredibly helpful, not just to my farmers, but to constituents of all kinds.
Great.
So I want to say thank you
for telling me that.
For them, their responsiveness, and actually their proactiveness. So thank you again for being here today. And lastly, I'll just say, after the 4 years of very difficult conditions at the USDA, it's good to have people that have actually been to a farm in charge of the USDA. So thank you for all your work. And Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman yields back. And I recognize the gentlelady from Maine, Ms. Pingree, for 5 minutes.
Well, there.
Hi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Madam Secretary. Thank you so much for being here with us and for spending this much time. I could have used up the entire time just to give you my list of things, and I share so much of the concerns that other people have said about the reorganization and the downsizing, the lack of staffing in our county offices, the impact of tariffs on our blueberry growers, potato growers, lumber, lobster, now that you got fish in your domain.
Yeah.
There are just so many issues that I'd like to talk to you about, but I'm going to try to focus on a few things.
Okay.
And I'm going to just beg you to be willing to follow up with me on a couple of things. So I don't expect you to
100%.
answer everything now. I'm not giving you a lot of yes or no quick questions. I really do want to solve some issues.
Thank you.
I'm the co-chair of the Organic Caucus, along with Representative Newhouse, who was in here earlier. It's a bipartisan caucus. And so you can imagine that glyphosate has been one of those issues I've worked on for a very long time. And I was really pleased in the part where both you and RFK have said, we're trying to figure out ways to support more regenerative and organic farming. But my concern is that's not always coming through. I just recently heard that we're so far behind in the organic cost share program that right now, 6 months into 2026, there's no indication when the 2025 application or payment process will take place. So I want to follow up with you on that.
I'll run that
money
down
was in the
today.
reconciliation bill, and other reconciliation bill money has been spent. But it's a huge problem, and I was really sad to hear that just last week, it was reported in our state that 5 farms have voluntarily let go of their organic certification.
Oh, no.
And the thing they cited was that the cost share money wasn't there. So it's just
Okay.
a specific problem we could fix.
Yes,
And I just
agreed.
want to see you guys put your money where your mouth is on these things. I've also heard on your new regenerative program, we have at least one farmer who's applied for that, and it has been months and months and no answer on that. So
Okay, I'll
again,
follow up on that today.
I'm really happy to follow up and just talk to you about that, or we don't have to figure it all out now. I wanted to say, in one of the great things, I was pleased to hear about your domestic cotton program. I'm also the co-chair of the the Slow Fashion Caucus. And the reason we have that is because we're trying to get more domestic fibers and less use of synthetics that end up in
That's right.
landfills, which is a huge problem. So would love to follow up with you about that, about how you're really going to implement it, how you're going to help the farmers, and about other domestic fibers. We've heard a lot about the people in the fashion industry unable to source enough domestic cotton, linen, hemp, and wool. And sometimes it's about the infrastructure, and particularly in the hemp sector, where we tried to expand that a lot, there was literally no processing, so most hemp is procured in other places. Back to glyphosate, I'm very worried about the overuse of glyphosate in the Forest Service and the spraying that's going on right now. In another, world, Representative Huffman and I just sent a letter to Chief Schultz to ask for far more details about the use of glyphosate. And I'll copy you on that, just because I think it's really important. When you said, I heard you talking to McGovern earlier today, and you said glyphosate is safe if it is used as directed. Well, one of the concerns people have is how many places it's turning up.
Yes,
and so one of the
I
questions we're
understand.
asking is if there's widespread use of it in the Forest Service now, which happens in my state and many other states, is it being used properly? Are we looking at the runoff? Are we looking at the whole picture of what's going on here? And is that the best way to regenerate our forests as we go through this? And secondly, that's true as glyphosate is used increasingly as a desiccant in crops. And that's another thing that I think people are concerned about. And you see some states like Florida, Texas, not exactly the hotbed of liberalism, now testing for glyphosate in oats. And I think your mom's a Texas legislator.
She is.
Yeah, so there we go.
She's very concerned about this as well.
Exactly.
So,
So I
yes.
hope your mom is calling you up as much as I
she
call
is.
and nag my
She
daughter.
is.
And that leads me to one last thing that I'd like to talk to you about, and that's PFAS. That's been an area where we've done a lot of work in my home state. I've made it a point on agriculture appropriations to funnel more money towards the USDA for PFAS work, and we need more action going on that. And I haven't heard a lot about what you're doing. Again, I'd be just really pleased to sit down and chat with you sometime and hear who's working on it, what are your plans.
I would welcome
so
that.
Can we make a deal?
Yes.
And say we're gonna have a real conversation and talk about some of these things. It's not a gotcha. I just really want to solve some problems for the people in my state.
I would love that and welcome it, and we'll follow up and get something scheduled right away.
Okay. If you don't follow up, we will. And
Okay.
we'll just pop over there one day, and you'll be like, oh no, now she's here. I got to have a meeting.
No. I would really welcome it. And all issues that you ran through, I know we're out of time, but all issues that we ran through, I talked to RFK yesterday about the regen program, talked to our forest team this morning about glyphosate, so
Okay.
I'm tracking.
All right,
I'm tracking.
thank you.
Now I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Valadeo, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Rollins. Thank you for being here, and thank you for coming to visit us in the Central Valley last week. A lot of great feedback. My farmers really enjoyed the conversation and the continued conversation you've had with them over the weekend. Very early emails Monday morning, so I know you're working a lot of hours, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Your team and yourself have been great to work with. I know Representative Carbajal brought it up and talked a little bit about glassy wing sharpshooter. I was just on the floor talking about an amendment to the Ag-Approps bill on this. Wanted to follow up just a quick question. Given the outbreak is linked to a nursery stock, what further steps can APHIS take to help prevent future pest introductions through domestic nurseries? Have you looked into any of this, or?
Oh, yes, we've been tracking it. I mentioned we've been very caught up with screwworm and HPAI the last year. That's taken a lot of our attention, but no, we've got entire teams who are looking at all of these pests that are potentially, and we've talked a lot today, not in this pest world, but we have talked a lot today about agriculture, farm security as national security. There is also a real threat in compromising our food supply chain with pests that are brought in with that purpose in mind. So it just tells you, I think, what a priority this has to be.
All right. Switching up a little bit, flavored milk in schools. USDA currently enforces that flavored milk in schools must contain no more than 10 grams of added sugar per 8-ounce serving. This is a workable guideline that encourages milk consumption in kids and adds a healthy supplement to their diet. While there are valid concerns about excessive added sugar consumption among children, flavored milk remains an important source of key nutrients like calcium, vitamin D, and protein. Many dairy producers appreciate USDA's decision to continue allowing flavored milk in school milk programs, but are you able to provide some assurance that under your leadership that USDA will continue to maintain a workable standard to encourage the consumption of milk in schools?
Yes.
Easy yes or no answer. That's great.
Yes.
Thanks. Specialty crops continue to report that labor challenges are outpacing the development of mechanization alternatives. These emerging technologies help producers lower input costs and maximize profits. What is the USDA doing to accelerate the development and adoption of automation technologies for specialty crops? And you can provide an update on how your efforts have been implemented in the field so far.
Yeah, we've invested tens of millions of dollars, just USDA. I know there's a whole private sector, Silicon Valley, out in your part of the country, a lot of those sort of geniuses have actually pivoted to agriculture. And so to see what they are building and creating with AI, et cetera, the drones that can fly over a crop, a field of corn and tell you exactly where a pest is, potential pickers, et cetera, ear tags on the cattle that can tell you, how your dairy cattle, how she's feeling that day, what she's eaten, whether she's a little bit sick. This is the future. And as you refer to labor, there's obviously a lot of challenges. A lot of your farmers talked to me about that when I was in your district last week. We're working on that, obviously, for the now, but we also have to look for the future, and we're making a lot of progress there.
Appreciate that. Now on research. One of the most important ways USDA supports specialty crop producers is through agriculture research. The work conducted by ARS has been critical to the success and competitiveness of our domestic specialty crop industry. I have concerns about the department's proposed reorganization and potential disruption to research programs and facilities. While I support efforts to improve efficiency, agriculture research depends on specialized facilities and experienced personnel. Throughout this process, how is USDA maintaining critical research capacity and avoiding disruptions on ongoing research?
You know, we obviously are closing no research down. We are relocating to parts of the country that are aligned with a university like a Purdue, for example, in Indiana, or any of our amazing land grants. You've got some incredible ones in California and out west. Really, they're also incredible. So that research can begin to build upon itself. The challenge is when you have decades of Washington, D.C. located research, they're doing extraordinary work, extraordinary, but you begin to lose out on the opportunity to have some of the brightest minds who may not want to leave a Purdue or a Texas A&M or an Oklahoma State and move to Washington, where it's much more expensive to live and to do that research. That what the feedback we've gotten, and I realize, listen, I'm not here to say it's been perfect. Everyone is so excited to move to Indianapolis or Colorado Springs or Salt Lake City or Raleigh, North Carolina, but at the end of the day, the opportunity to move those core functions out into America and the research part aligned with real research universities where we're spending billions of dollars, I think that's going to be a much better use of our taxpayer dollars. And I also think it's going to serve as a recruitment tool to get even more researchers interested in the USDA research.
I appreciate that. With 7 seconds left, thank you for your time, and I appreciate everyone bringing up screwworm. It's a huge concern for us in the dairy industry as well.
Yes.
I appreciate your efforts on that, and Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Gentleman yields back. The Secretary's been very generous with her time. She's going to extend another 10 minutes, and we have 3 members left. So just encourage everybody to be succinct. And I recognize Mr. Gray from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Madam Secretary.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you again, and thank you for being here with us today. I'd like to begin with a little thought experiment. Let's imagine that you became President of the United States, and California wasn't exactly in your corner during the election. You sit down with your closest advisors, and you say, I'd like to come up with a plan to make life as difficult as possible for California farmers. What would that plan look like? You know, what would we do? Well, first, we might disrupt the labor market. California grows many of the fruits, vegetables, and specialty crops that are among the most labor-intensive in the world. If you wanted to create problems, that'd certainly be a great place to start. Then we'd announce tariffs, and then change them. Then maybe announce new ones, and then change them again. California is the nation's largest agricultural export state. Our wineries depend on customers in places like Canada. Our almond growers depend on export markets around the world. If nobody knows what the rules are from one week to the next, that's a pretty effective way to create uncertainty. While we're at it, let's pick some trade fights with some of our biggest customers. If foreign consumers stop buying American products and retailers start replacing California wine, almonds, pistachios, walnuts, and other products with something else, all the better. Next, let's cut staffing levels at USDA offices and local service centers, especially the offices farmers rely on to access conservation programs, disaster assistance, and economic relief. If we're going to promise help, we should probably make it harder to access it at the same time. Then, let's increase input costs, fuel, fertilizer, energy, equipment. And maybe we could even add a little uncertainty around water policy, too. California farmers love making long-term planning decisions when they don't know what their water supply will look like 6 months from now. Then let's freeze funding for pest detection and inspection programs, cut surveillance efforts, reduce research into drought, wildfire resilience, invasive species, maybe crop productivity. And if we're really committed to the plan, let's make some of those research cuts large enough that farmers are still feeling them 10 years from now. And after all of that, let's announce a massive economic relief package for American agriculture and then distribute it in a way that leaves California farmers with little to show for it, because after all, if you're trying to punish California agriculture, it would be a shame to let the relief program get in the way. So, Madam Secretary, I'm obviously being a little sarcastic. But the reason the joke works is because every one of these things is a real concern being raised by farmers in my district in California today. California farmers certainly don't expect special treatment. They don't expect every policy decision to benefit them. They just want a fair shot to compete. They grow the fruits, vegetables, nuts, dairy products, and wine that feed families across this country and around the world. They support rural communities, create jobs, and help make America an agricultural powerhouse. So when policies on labor, trade, research, water, pest prevention, and federal assistance all move in the wrong direction at the same time, it certainly makes people start to wonder whether anyone in Washington gets it. So I'll leave you with the success of American agriculture depends on the success of California agriculture. And I hope collectively we haven't lost sight of that.
May I respond?
Please.
If I were looking to compromise our California farmers, I would shut down trade access around the world. I would take away about $50 billion in trade opportunity. If I were looking to hurt California farmers, I would oversee between a 40 and 50% increase in interest rates, labor, fuel, fertilizer, land cost, property taxes. If I were looking to hurt farmers in California, I would recalibrate the USDA around a climate change agenda and a diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda that included supporting grants that supported BIPOC and queer farmers, their words, not mine, in San Francisco for food justice. I would spend taxpayer dollars on whether there's racial discrimination in the pest control industry and whether transgender men and women need more menstrual cycle support. That's what I would do if I would hurt farmers. And
well,
so I think you and I have a very different view of what this looks like. Thank you.
Time has expired. I now recognize
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. I recognize the gentlelady from Florida, Mrs. Kamick, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for being here and your patience and your tenacious attitude. I love it.
I know that been here a really long time.
So. You've been here a really long time. Yes, yes. I just want to say I am so very grateful, as are the 44,000 producers that call the Sunshine State their home. We are so grateful for your leadership at USDA. We have seen under your tenure USDA come through in so many different ways. Just most recently, the $1.6 billion for specialty crop producers that opened up a little over a month ago. The cutting-edge citrus rootstock technology was approved that would not have been possible without the cooperation and data from USDA. And as co-chair of the Aquaculture Caucus, I was happy as a clam when the Office of Seafood was opened. And I was so grateful to be a part of that announcement. So it has been an incredible 500 days, as you pointed out, for the USDA as well as the administration. But as you know also well, we have so many challenges. And so I'm just going to jump right into the disaster assistance. We've spoken about this. You have been incredibly forthcoming and had an open door policy working with our producers who have faced disasters. And just this week, Congressman Franklin and I, we introduced a bill that opens up, that would provide $3.5 billion in disaster assistance, with the majority of our delegation as co-sponsors. When Congress approves that funding, how fast can you get that money out the door?
We'll move at warp speed. Trump speed is what we call it at USDA, but we will move as quickly as humanly possible. This team is working 7 days a week, and
Absolutely.
and I'm so proud of them. So absolutely, yes.
And in that same vein, what have you seen that you are working to streamline and change within the agency when it comes to disasters? I have a long history of dealing with hurricanes and freezes, and we've seen a lot of broken systems. What specifically are you working on that has helped streamline assistance when disaster strikes?
I think what I have learned, first of all, we have an extraordinary team. Our undersecretary has been at this a long time, the entire team. But when you're working with 50 different states, with 50 different agricultural industries and needs, the back and forth sometimes takes a little too long. And I've asked the team to really come back to us for the next round to figure out how to cut out. You know, I think I was going back and forth with one of the congresswomen from the Northeast, and it got a little loud, but at the end of it, there were 27 meetings between the state and our team to get to a yes. That's not fair to our farmers. I think we have to be fair to the taxpayers, make sure the dollars are being spent wisely, so there has to be some real intention in it, but we've just got to be more efficient on both sides, both the states and the USDA team that works this through.
Absolutely. Well, and staying in the Florida vein here, obviously we've talked about Florida's citrus industry and the decline that we've seen over the last several decades due to citrus greening, hurricanes, rising production costs, inputs are through the roof. We are grateful for your support as we move forward on that, and that brings me to USMCA and the need for a seasonal and perishable provision to be included in the newest version of this agreement. I know that USTR is leading on this, but would USDA support a seasonal and perishable provision?
Well, I think USDA will support anything that helps our farmers and ranchers, and I'm in constant contact with Ambassador Greer. He's got an incredibly complex and nuanced job, but he does it as well as I think anyone we've ever seen. So yes, those conversations will continue, and I will continue to be the advocate that is necessary for all of our producers in that next round of decisions and negotiating.
And that means the world to Florida, because both through NAFTA and USMCA, there's been a real imbalance and struggle that our producers have seen. I want to give you my last 34 seconds to address any accusations or comments that have been levied your way. So by all means, take the last 30 seconds to respond to any accusations you would like to address today.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that we have had a really good, productive conversation for the most part. There have been a little bit of sort of not being able to appropriately respond on the SNAP fraud side, but I do believe that most Americans understand inherently the extent of the fraud, while at the same time understanding how important these programs are for those who truly need them. And this body has done remarkable work with work requirements, et cetera, to make sure those who really need it get it, but that we're doing what we can best way with the taxpayer dollar. So,
excellent.
Thank
Thank you for
Kat.
your leadership, Secretary.
Thank
with that,
you.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Julie's time
Good to
is
see you.
expired. And the final word goes to Mr. Nunn from Iowa.
Last but never least, Zach Nunn.
Secretary Rollins, thank you very much for being here. Chairman, thank you very much for holding us. We're playing wrap up, but here's the reality. You went into overtime here to take care of farmers who had questions, responsibilities that we have. You've been asked a lot of hard questions, Madam Secretary. I don't think you've been asked the really hard requirements that are needed by this committee. And so I'm going to ask it. Look, the reality is right now, Texas, Iowa, who has the better state fair?
Oh, you're putting me in a
game is on in front of all these witnesses, Madam Secretary.
Really tough position. What I will say is that Iowa State Fair and showing the steer and being part of that whole effort was really incredible. So I think I'm coming back.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
I'm very proud. But as the former Texas State Fair FFA'er and Cotton Bowl queen, all the things I was able to do, you know, my heart is in Texas.
That's
so, yes.
absolutely fair. Well,
It's a
luckily
great
this year's
question.
the 250th birthday of America, and we're going to have the state fair right here on the mall. You'll get to see them all. And
The
thank you
Great
very much for what you're
American
doing.
State Fair at the National Mall is going to be great. We've got a rodeo coming. We've got FFA'ers showing their animals. It's going to be really great.
That's absolutely fantastic. I've got 4 daughters showing this year. They're going to be in 4-H. We've got 2 sheep, 1 hog, and 1 Persian cat. It's a pro-American Persian cat, but we're all going to be
Did
in
you
the fair
just
together.
say you're
That's right.
showing a Persian cat?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Come to the,
Okay.
come back to the state fair. You're going to love it. We'll send you the
learn
pictures,
things
Madam
new
Secretary.
every day. Who knew? The Iowa State Fair.
That's right. That's right. If you were in Florida, you'd be showing gators. So this
Yes,
is fair.
exactly, exactly.
Madam Secretary, I just look at what we've been able to accomplish here in a short year with bipartisan support. We passed, $66 billion to help farmers, the largest farm safety net since 2002.
Yes.
We passed the farm bill that moved forward here in the House with a good bipartisan lead. That hasn't happened in nearly a decade. We've been able to, move forward with something very important to our state here in Iowa, helping with the biofuels solution for
Yes.
America's energy independence, year-round nationwide E15. And your leadership has helped bring to the farm country a USDA operation for the National Food Safety Center, 200 new federal jobs, not here in Washington, but right in the district. That's absolutely huge in my home community of Urbandale.
Yeah.
Thank you for the leadership on this.
Thank you.
87,000 family farmers are making decisions right now on things like input costs, including fertilizer. I'm working with my friend Dusty Johnson here on the Fertilizer Transparency Act, helping folks make educated and informed decisions. Can you highlight for us the real here that USDA is helping to help drive down input costs and things like fertilizer?
No, it's such an important question. We have talked about it a little bit, but I appreciate sort of ending on this, unless we have one more. The challenge that American agriculture faces didn't just happen yesterday. This is decades of policy of offshoring, whether it's fertilizer, seed, whether it's over government regulation, whether it is it's just one hit after another. And the input side of the equation, we're solving for the export, the market side of the equation, I think really impressively, and I'm really proud of that. But the input side is going to take a little bit of time to get the inputs back down. Even before the Iranian conflict, the cost of, as I said, interest rates up 73%, property taxes, fuel, labor, seed, fertilizer, just inflation overall, what we stepped into for me, February 13th, for the president, January 20th. It's the largest inflation since the Jimmy Carter years. That's just going to take a moment. And once we get out of this conflict, which the president is hyper-focused on doing very quickly, you'll begin to see a lot of that come back down. We'd already seen fuel decrease. Labor is on the downward trend. A lot of that's on the downward trend. Interest rates are going to come down. But it is a massive issue. And these farmers in a farm economy with a lot of headwinds, with very thin margins, if any margins at all, that's where their margins end up going. So the fertilizer piece, we can do a lot of good to onshore fertilizer back to America. We're investing a significant amount of USDA resources from Department of Energy, also from the Department of Commerce and across the federal government to get fertilizer back to America, and in so doing, begin to bring the cost down.
Madam Secretary, just God bless you for your leadership on this. I think this is really what government should be doing to help take care of people who need it most. I want to say this. Thank you for spending as much time as you have both in this committee, but equally back in our districts. For each one of us, I know that you have been out here talking, hearing from farm leaders. 70% of farms are going to transition to a new generation of Americans, and you've been hearing directly from them. I know you're a farm gal at heart. Our family's sixth generation. We want to make sure that's set up for success. You're leading the way. Madam Secretary, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Keep farming.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Zach.
Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Before we adjourn today, I invite the ranking member to share any closing comments that she might have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard a lot from the Secretary today. A lot of excuses, a lot of looking in the rearview mirror after 1.5 years of total Republican leadership in Washington. The lack of accountability or ownership of this administration's failures to farm country is truly stunning. And worse, we're going to be right back where we are today in a year if the administration continues down the same policy paths. Madam Secretary, I have farmers coming to Capitol Hill who, in the privacy of our meetings, tell me that they wish we had a Secretary of Agriculture who would just be straight with them and acknowledge the reality on the ground. They see the same song and dance that everyone got here today. But unlike most people in the room, they have to turn to their ledgers, see their disappearing margins and their increasing debts, and the picture they see does not match the rosy picture painted by the Secretary. They are being crushed by tariffs and high costs. Families in Minnesota and across the country are paying more for groceries each month, and they're starting to skip meals and buy less because Trump's policies are eating away at their paychecks. We have before us an Agriculture Secretary who is giving a wonderful performance for a reality TV president, a performance that is scripted, rehearsed, and frankly disingenuous. A performance that falls flat because it's not based on anything real, but based on what she thinks the president wants farmers to hear. All Americans, including farmers and working families, just want the Trump administration to be straight with them and focus on policies that help alleviate their financial pain, not make it worse. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. Let me just say I want to bring a sense of reality to the closing comments here. Quite frankly, this administration, when they came into office, was facing record inflation and zero trade with a Democrat in the White House last administration. And I'm somebody who works in a very bipartisan way. Anybody knows me knows that. I'm just speaking truth to facts here. We had, during 2024, the stories about the bankruptcies that were out of control, the number of suicides as a result. And it was Republicans and Democrats that united with our farmers to push and to provide the $10 billion for the economic harm in December of 2024. I appreciate the fact of this administration is tackling trade. And we've heard about a significant number, it was somewhere between 15 and 19 of new trade agreements already that have been in place, reducing the trade deficit. Before the last administration was always a trade surplus, but reducing that, what was approximately $45 billion trade deficit, cutting that in half already. And with more to do, and trade is messy. You don't achieve trade based on good luck or good looks. You've got to really come to the table and to stand strong for the American farmer. And that's what we're seeing our USTR representative, who is our ambassador, USTR is, he is just committed to the American farmer, and I appreciate the work that he is doing. It is not easy, and it's a large world with a lot of countries, but at the end of the day, we are making tremendous gains. I agree that the situation in Iran needs to come to a close here as soon as possible. I also appreciate the fact that Iran has been killing Americans for at least 47 years. My own son that was wounded with an IED in Iraq, it was very well documented that IED came from Iran. And so with Iran having nuclear capabilities, I don't think there's anybody that agrees that that's acceptable. But it's one thing to just talk about how it's not acceptable. It's another thing to show leadership and take that on. And so that does need to be resolved. I love the fact that this administration is engaging in a government of the whole effort when it looking at domestic, not just domestic fertilizer production, but also, easing up with some counter duties, to be able to get, more of those important inputs into the United States, to bring those costs down. And so, Madam Secretary, I appreciate your vision. I appreciate your leadership. And I think I also appreciate, my colleagues who have supported Farm Bill 1.0, that you're now currently implementing all the provisions within that second title, the agriculture title, which I wish we'd have called it the Farm Bill title of the One Big Beautiful Bill. And I appreciate all of my colleagues that, supported the Farm Food and National Security Act. All the Republicans here, I really appreciate Mr. Costa, Congresswoman Davids, Congressman Davis, Congressman Vasquez, Congressman Gray, Congresswoman McDonald-Rivet, and Congressman Riley, who joined together to do the work that our farmers not only that they need, but that they deserve. And I wish, and I'm really pleased that's in the hands of Senator John Bozeman now and his team, that we can get that enacted and into law. And so with that, we've had great participation today on both sides of the aisle, and that always thrills me when we have a robust discussion. So thank you, Madam Secretary. I know we kept you longer than what you'd hoped for. Under the rules of the committee, the record of today's hearing will remain open for